Empire of Steel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. The first cannon was successfully cast, and the atmosphere in the equipment department was as hot as coal in a blast furnace. Every craftsman had a smile on his face in the past month. They have been working day and night, and they have lost 10 pounds in order to complete the task arranged by King Key. Now we just have to wait for the test firing of this cannon. If it is successful, it means that the equipment department has truly mastered the production technology of artillery. His Royal Highness, let's try it. The craftsmen are all waiting eagerly. Chen Qi was afraid that Xiaoming would not let them watch the test firing of the artillery. Just as uncomfortable yet, Your Highness, let us see it. The craftsmen in the equipment department requested one after another, and their eyes were looking forward to the power of the artillery. The craftsmen were covered in sweat and iron powder, and a smell mixed with metal and sweat wafted through the equipment department. With so many requests, Xiaoming naturally couldn't refuse. He was just joking with Chen Qi just now. Of course, the test of this artillery requires the participation of these craftsmen. Only in this way can problems be found and rectified in time. Well, it's definitely too late today. We need a suitable venue, and the artillery is very heavy. Transportation is also a problem, and it is also the artillery shells. Xiaoming's tone became a little heavier when he lifted the cannon. While the shells of the artillery must naturally be suitable for the current artillery. If it is too large, it will not fit in, and the effectiveness of the small gunpowder will be greatly reduced. It is very likely that the shells will hit the feet before the artillery was produced. The equipment division could not accurately calculate the caliber of shells needed for this artillery, because it did not dare to produce shells. Xiaoming is a little helpless about this. After all, there is no accurate measurement system in this era, and the products produced cannot be accurate. At present, the caliber of the muzzle can only be compared to the production of artillery shells. Otherwise, the produced shells may not be able to be inserted. He thought that this precise measurement system should also be established, so that the production of artillery and the production of shells could not interfere with each other. It only needs to be produced in strict accordance with the size, and this is also necessary for the future industrial development of King's How. After all, once the lathe can participate in production, a metric is more needed to mass-produce parts. Although Chen Qi and others are in a hurry, if the artillery is to be tested, some preparations are needed. Not only the issue of shells, locations, and transportation. There is another thing that Chen Qi can't manage, and that is the problem of gunpowder. Thinking of this, Xiaoming left the equipment department and went directly to Lu Tong's chemical laboratory. At this time, the chemical laboratory, like the equipment department, was also handled by guards, and everyone involved in gunpowder production was closely monitored. The importance of the country cannot be easily revealed to others, and these confidentiality measures are naturally understandable. These things involve the safety of the fief. These people have become accustomed to this kind of environment. Compared with the production of artillery, the production of gunpowder is much easier. But what Xiaoming wants is high-quality gunpowder, because the work of Lu Tong and others is not easy. Many granular gunpowders are unqualified and will come again in such a place. In order to avoid danger, any metal objects are not allowed to be brought in, and the tools here are basically wooden. This is to prevent the gunpowder from exploding. Your Highness, why are you here? It's too dangerous. Lu Tong looked anxious when he saw Xiaoming coming. This chemistry laboratory is not the one in Bowen College. Otherwise, Xiaoming is really worried that one day the entire Bowen College will be blown up by Lu Tong. Now, this chemical laboratory is located outside the city of King's How and adjacent to the workshop area, but it is separated by several hundred meters and surrounded by several walls. You are not afraid of danger? What is this king afraid of? Xiaoming said with a smile. Lu Tong was stunned when he heard the words. He had never contacted other vassal kings, but he still believed that the vassal king in front of him must be different. In King Qi's body, he could not feel any sense of isolation that is superior to others. On the contrary, Xiaoming is always approachable and kind. After a sigh of relief, Lu Tong reacted and said to Xiaoming, Your Highness, part of the gunpowder you ordered has already been produced. Really? How many? Xiaoming asked with interest. Lu Tong took Xiaoming through the front yard and went straight to the backyard. When this place was designed, it was both a laboratory and a factory. The first half was the factory, and the laboratory was in the back. 20 buildings of various sizes are distributed throughout the area, each with a different function. The warehouse is also in the backyard, and Lu Tong moved all the gunpowder produced into the warehouse. Arriving at the warehouse, Lu Tong pointed to a sack and said, Your Highness, This is it, don't know if it's enough. The sack Lu Tong pointed at was about half a person tall, and it was so thick that a person could hold it. It was estimated that the gunpowder inside was about 100 kilograms. It's far from enough. Xiao Ming said, we have to speed up the pace. If there are not enough manpower, tell me, I can allocate it to you at any time, and you must increase the output as ancient war generally lasted for a long time, and the artillery fired a lot of times. This bag of granular gunpowder was simply not enough for an artillery. Lu Tong nodded, yes, Your Highness, I will let people speed up, but Your Highness, this material, is there not enough gunpowder material? Xiao Ming frowned. Yes, this saltpeter usually comes from several nitrate caves in Shu, and there is no production in other places. Before His Highness came, Chen Bing and Xiao Gang left. He said that all the saltpeter on the market can be bought now, but he will not be able to buy it in the future. No businessman sells saltpeter to King Zhao. Lu Tong's remarks made Xiao Ming cold. The current saltpeter in Dao Kingdom mainly comes from several open-air nitrate caves in Shu because the mining is easy and the demand is not large. Dayou State does not pay much attention to this saltpeter, and basically there is no special mining of saltpeter in other places. Xiao Ming once checked the resource distribution map in the technology library. There are also saltpeter mines in his fief. He also asked Jin Dafu to keep looking for it, but there is no news yet. He can't blame Jin Dafu for this. In this era, except for open-air minerals that are easy to find, finding those buried minerals is no less than looking for a needle in a haystack. He asked Jin Dafu to look for a lot of minerals, and now Jin Dafu has been looking for it. Although it is very hard to live in the wind and sleep, but so far there has been very little harvest, and there is no news of the saltpeter mine. Now there is a problem with the source of saltpeter, which is a heavy blow to Xiao Ming. Seeing Xiao Ming's uncertain expression, Lu Tong hesitated and asked, Your Highness, do you think this is the ghost of the King of Shu? Chapter 152 The Problem of Saltpeter. King of Shu? Xiao Ming said lightly. What followed was the memory of the predecessor Xiao Ming about this King of Shu. Among the princes, he, the fifth prince, had the worst relationship. The two, who were both rebellious, clashed constantly when they were in Chang'an. Xiao Ming and the King of Shu fought many times because of jealousy, so they were also scolded by Xiao Wangsun. The fifth prince is now the vassal of Shu, but he hasn't thought of him for a long time. In Xiao Ming's memory, the land of Shu was remote and mountainous, and the location was equally remote. However, since ancient times, the land of Shu has been called the land of abundance, and there has never been a lot of food. The only shortcoming is that the Nanman in the south of Shu and the Tubo in the west often disturb the border, but in general, the situation of the King of Shu is slightly better than his, but not much better. In addition, the land of Shu is inland and the mountain road is rugged, which seems to make the fifth prince even more uncomfortable. That's right, Your Highness, think about it. King Zhao originally purchased a large amount of saltpeter, and the merchants from Shu were very happy and wanted to earn the money, but suddenly the merchants couldn't get saltpeter. Except that the King of Shu could have this kind of money. Who else can do it? Lu Tong complained, if this is the case, the King of Shu is really hurting His Highness. This barbarian race is pressed for time, and he also stumbles upon His Highness. This is not to show that he wants to see His Highness. It's a joke. If it was someone else, Xiao Ming might still think about it, but if it was the King of Shu, he really believed that the King of Shu had such thoughts. Shu Road is difficult, and it is difficult to ascend to the sky. It is precisely because of this that the land of Shu is easy to defend and difficult to attack, and now the vassal kings in the south and the vassal kings in the north are two different minds. The King of Shu naturally belongs to the vassal kings in the south. If the north falls, he can be happy just guarding the land of Shu. Moreover, the King of Shu also knew that the throne of the Great Yu Kingdom was not related to him, but with the chaos, it would not be the same. After pondering for a while, Xiao Ming said, is it the work of the King of Shu? It is not known yet. How much gunpowder can be produced from the remaining materials? Up to 500 caddies of gunpowder. Lu Tong said. Xiao Ming felt agitated for a while. 500 caddies of gunpowder was not enough for the barbarians. Today's artillery shoots solid shells, and the power is only equivalent to trebuchet that can shoot directly, but the range is longer, and the damage caused is not very large. If the shell does not directly hit the body, it cannot kill people. Unlike flowering, the bullet can also kill enemies with shrapnel and shock waves. This gunpowder is sufficient, and it is still difficult to fight. If this gunpowder is not enough, then I am afraid that Kangzhou City will only be reduced to a battle of hand-to-hand combat. I'll figure out a way to deal with the material. You should produce it as soon as possible. Xiao Ming said, his expression a little gloomy in front of Iron and Coal, because this matter was discussed in the court, but the other vassal kings did not deliberately make things difficult for him. Moreover, the coal mines and iron mines had been flooded with water. But the local area could barely provide some, not to mention that there was no shortage of water, and King Wei was willing to do his best to make Xiaoming a meat shield for him. Therefore, coal and iron have not been a problem, but now this saltpeter is really killing him. Dayu Kingdom is already using gunpowder, but the use of gunpowder has not yet reached a large-scale level, so the demand for gunpowder is not very large. The saltpeter for the production of gunpowder also came from the land of Shu, but because it was used by the Chang'an Equipment Division, the king of Shu naturally did not dare to make a fuss about it. After leaving the workshop area, Xiaoming returned directly to the palace, and now he can only send a letter to Chang'an and ask Xiao Wangsun to solve the matter. At the same time, he was going to ask King Wei for some saltpeter and gunpowder. But it is estimated that the gunpowder and saltpeter that he could get from King Wei would not be much, because King Wei also did not pay attention to firearms. After writing the letter, Xiaoming asked Ziwen to go to the inn, and let her go to Chang'an quickly. This country of Great Yu is not modern. If there is a problem, a phone call can solve the problem. The fastest way to send letters between the cities is the post station, but it takes at least 9 days to go back and forth for a distance of 800 miles, and if there are any forks after that, they have to send letters back and forth to transmit information. Thinking of this, Xiaoming became more and more annoyed. What he was most afraid of at the moment was that the king of Shu did it on purpose. If so, the king of Shu only needed a trick to make him overwhelmed. When Kangzhou City was over, saltpeter arrived late. At that time, it was useless. If Kangzhou City was breached, he would not need to send saltpeter. Instead, Xiao Wangsun would rely on him in the future. King of Shu, if you do it on purpose, this king will peel your skin sooner or later. Xiaoming hated his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. Shudi and Kingzhou were thousands of miles away, and he was beyond his reach. While asking Chang'an for help, Xiaoming felt that he couldn't sit still, so he sent a letter to King Wei. At the same time, the police notified Jin Dafu to come back in the evening of the next day. Jin Dafu arrived at the palace after receiving the news. Your Highness, when are you so anxious? Jin Dafu was also tired of sleeping in the open air. He had suffered a lot in these days when he was hunting for mines, and he had lost a lot of weight. Don't look for other minerals for the time being. From now on, you should try your best to find saltpeter and sulfur, and the rest will be postponed for the time being. Xiaoming said the upgrading of industry can be postponed, but it is urgent to deal with the barbarians, and once he uses artillery to defeat the barbarians, the Great Yu Kingdom will definitely pay attention to gunpowder. At that time, saltpeter will probably become a trump card for all forces to restrain themselves. This is the same as modern oil. It is very sad for an oil-poor country. If oil is blocked, the economy will collapse soon. His Royal Highness, what happened? Jin Dafu asked in confusion. Xiaoming then talked about the saltpeter, and Jin Dafu's expression suddenly became solemn. This saltpeter is related to the life of this king. Let's do this. I will assign another 5,000 young and strong slaves to you. In the area of the saltpeter mine, even if you dig with a net, you must find the saltpeter. Xiaoming's voice was loud. Jin Dafu realized the seriousness of this problem, and said with a bow, this old slave will withdraw the mining teams from all over the world and try to find saltpeter. After all, Jin Dafu turned around and left the palace. As soon as he arrived at the door, he met Pang Yukin, who was walking over. Butler Jin looks anxious. What happened? Pang Yukin, who has always been good at observing words and expressions, couldn't help asking, hey, there's a problem with the saltpeter. Your Highness is getting angry. You have to be careful when you go in. Jin Dafu said. Pang Yukin frowned. It's really good luck and misfortune never come singly. I'm afraid your Highness will be angry again. Jin Dafu was in a hurry to find mines and had no time to inquire about other things, so he just handed over his hands and got on his horse and galloped away. Looking at the back of Jin Dafu's departure, Pang Yukin smiled bitterly, hesitated and entered the palace. Chapter 153. Misfortunes never come alone. What? Cement was robbed? Exactly, Your Highness, this is the news I just got. Pang Yukin said. Zun Xingchang was in charge of repairing Kangzhou City, but Pang Yukin was in charge of the logistics and transportation. Naturally, he was the first to know when something went wrong because of the saltpeter incident. Xiaoming's fire hadn't gone down yet, and he was immediately enraged by the news. He said, you can follow me to the Kingzhou army camp now. These remnants of the wealthy family, it's hard not to tear them to pieces. Solve the hatred in this king's heart. Pang Yukin's face turned pale. He had never felt such violent emotions from Xiaoming, but this is not Xiaoming's fault. The local aristocrats were wiped out by Xiaoming, and they were harvested. It's just that over the years, the aristocrats have been deeply ingrained, and it is not so easy to clean them up. The nobles in Qingzhou were wiped out very quickly and cleanly because of the existence of the Qingzhou army, but the armies of other states were weak, which gave those nobles a chance to react. Many wealthy families took the opportunity to rebel, and the chaos in the prefectures and counties turned into a pot of porridge. However, with the support of the common people and the strict training of the new army, these rebellions were quickly suppressed. However, some of the remnants escaped into the deep mountains and swamps, coming out from time to time to make trouble. Don't worry, Your Highness, these gangsters have been surrounded by the Qingzhou army who have arrived in Wubao, but this Wubao used to be the Wubao of the Liu family of the Qingzhou noble family. It is the easiest to defend and difficult to attack among the many Wubaos in the 6 states. Qingzhou the army has attacked several times and then retreated, causing dozens of casualties. Pang Yukin said, can you do it without a hurry? This cement is related to the repair of Qingzhou city. If it is delayed, the consequences can't be imagined. Xiaoming said, this time he really experienced what it means to be unparalleled, and misfortunes do not come singly. Pang Yukin stopped talking, just followed Xiaoming to Qingzhou camp. At this time, Niu Ben was standing on the platform and watching the soldiers in the training camp. Lu Fei and Luo Xin performed their respective duties and were responsible for corrections. Xiaoming and Pang Yukin appeared in the camp, and Niu Ben immediately stopped the training. Your Highness. Niu Ben stepped down from the stage that was drunk and unconscious, and woke up the next day with regrets, for fear that he would lose his temper in front of Xiaoming. Xiaoming was anxious at this time. He was afraid that these gangsters would destroy the cement, so this matter could not be delayed. He said bluntly, Old General, I'm afraid that this time I will let you go and the supplies to Qingzhou city. Niu Ben was stunned, but he didn't find it strange. He had experienced a lot in his life, and he had already seen it. Since that's the case, the last general will now lead the Qingzhou army to Shishi. Niu Ben said calmly. Then he asked, I wonder how many gangsters there are? According to the information obtained, there are probably 1,000 people. Pang Yukin said. Niu Ben frowned and said, the art of war, the number of sieges is 5 times the number of defenders, so it takes 5,000 people to go after all. He asked Lu Fei and Luo Xin to order troops at this time. Xiaoming gradually calmed down. Now every soldier and soldier are very important. Now these remnants of the noble family know that they will die if they are caught, and they will definitely fight to the death. At that time, the casualties of the Qingzhou army would definitely be very large. He had an idea, and he was worried that there was no place to test the artillery. Isn't this an opportunity? He said. The old general will go first and trap the bandits in Wubao. This king will come later, and I will attack the city when I arrive. Niu Ben clasped his fists and responded, Yes, Your Highness. When Xiaoming and Niu Ben were talking, Lu Fei and Luo Xin did not dare to interrupt. It seemed that Niu Ben was obedient to the control of the two leaving the Qingzhou camp. Xiaoming also remembered a question at this time. He couldn't help asking, since the Liu family Wubao is easy to defend and difficult to attack, how did these gangsters get in? This Wubao belongs to the Liu family. The members of the Liu family among the rioters are naturally aware of the structure of Wubao. No one thought that there was a tunnel hidden in this Wubao. The people who escaped said that the bandits were for robbery, grabbing Wubao's grain rates, but seeing the convoy transporting cement thought it was valuable, so there was such a big commotion. Afterwards, the Qingzhou army came and wanted to attack through the tunnel as well, but the tunnel was bombed by these gangsters. Pang Yukin said, bombed? Xiaoming's spirit was shocked. You said it was bombed? Yes, Your Highness, these bandits blew up the tunnel with gunpowder. Pang Yukin said again, but this time he suddenly realized something. How can these gangsters have gunpowder? The two said almost in unison. Gunpowder is not a secret in the Great Yu Kingdom, but it is not just that one person can prepare gunpowder, which involves the problem of this material. For example, this time Xiaoming was stumped by this material. At this time, there was gunpowder in the hands of these remnants of the wealthy family, which had to make Xiaoming think anyway, let's take down these gangsters first. Xiaoming said calmly. Back in Qingzhou city, Xiaoming went to the equipment department, and at the same time asked the equipment department to prepare a carriage to transport the artillery to Liujia Wubao. In addition, he urged Chen Qi to polish up some cannonballs overnight, and then sent someone to Lutong to fetch the gunpowder the next day. A 4-horse carriage drove out of Kingzhou City with a thing wrapped in layers of sackcloth. The escort of the carriage was the most elite cavalry of the Kingzhou army. There are more than 400 miles between Kingzhou and Kingzhou, and it is estimated that Liujiao Wubao is also 200 miles away from Kingzhou. The artillery weighed about a ton, and it was very laborious even for 4 horses. And it took 5 or 6 days to travel such a long distance. Xiao Ming went to Liujiao Wubao this time, saying that it was to suppress bandits, but in fact it was to test the power of artillery. Although he has seen countless images, he has never seen the real situation because it was a test cannon. Chen Qi and the others naturally went too, but they went with the cannon. Xiao Ming, Niu Ben, and the others set off first. After 3 days, they finally saw Liujiao Wubao, which was surrounded by the Kangzhou Legion. Chen Fu, captain of the Kangzhou Military Academy, has met His Highness. The person responsible for the siege of this Liujiao fort was the Kangzhou army. This Chen Fu was also a veteran of the Kingzhou army before, and was later dispatched to Kangzhou by Xiao Ming. How's it going? Xiao Ming asked. Go back to your highness, these bandits can't get out of the city after occupying Wubao. There is enough food and water in Wubao, which is enough to last for several months. It's really troublesome. Chen Fu said he has tried to siege the city and failed several times. Xiao Ming looked at the Wubao in front of him. Unlike the Wang family's rammed Wubao, this Liujiao Wubao was all made of stone, and the city wall was more than 10 meters high. The most important thing is that this Liujiao Wubao guards the official road between Kangzhou and Kingzhou, so after this Wubao was taken, it became a transit point between the two states. However, building Wubao on the official road shows how arrogant the Liu family was back then. Chapter 154. The artillery arrives. Wait. Looking at Wubao Xiao Ming in front of him, he gave an order. At this time, a figure who seemed to be the leader appeared on the city wall of Wubao, and they were looking at the Kingzhou army who were reinforced below. At this time, Chen Fu pointed to the man on the city wall and said, Your Highness, this person is Liu Trang, the leader of this gang of gangsters. His father participated in the conspiracy of Lotus Pond against His Highness. He killed the Liu family Wubao and killed most of the Liu family's tribes, but he still let this Liu Trang run away. The dazzling sunlight made Xiao Ming narrow his eyes. After the barbarians in the Lotus Pond were annihilated, the news was blocked. At the same time, Xiao Ming ordered the arrest of the nobles who participated in the rebellion. At that time, many aristocrats were annihilated by the army before they could react. If the Liu family had been on guard at that time, this Wubao would not have been taken down by the Kangzhou army so easily. According to Lu Fei, at that time, Chen Fu also used the method of cooperating with the inside and the outside, and pretended to send someone to buy food in Wubao, and suddenly attacked at the gate of Wubao to seize the Wubao unexpectedly. A month later, this Wubao was taken back by the Liu family in the same way. The old way is to persuade them to surrender to delay the time, so that they can be neglected. This gang of gangsters is different from the Sun family or the Wang family's trilogy. At that time, it was possible to persuade them to surrender. However, these gangsters were still resisting after they had exterminated the barbarians for so long, indicating that they already had the idea of fighting him to the death. Moreover, it is estimated that these gangsters are all children of the wealthy clan. Unlike the Wang family and the Sun clan, there are many servants in it. These servants are dissatisfied with the wealthy clan themselves, but they are only under the coercion of the wealthy clan, and it is easy to persuade them to surrender. It was different for these noble children, and persuading them to surrender would not have any effect on them. Chen Fu responded, and went out to the front to start shouting to the bandits on the tower, meaning nothing more than surrender or kill and other common words. Just before he could finish speaking, a sharp arrow suddenly shot down from the city gate and slanted at his feet. Niu Ben glanced at the city tower and said, There are experts in this gang of bandits who can shoot arrows so far. Estimated the distance between the tower and Chen Fu, at least 230 meters. And even if the barbarian bow and arrow range is only about 180 meters, it can be seen that there is an archer with amazing arm strength. Then, Niu Ben suddenly said to Lu Fei, Go get my bow and arrow. Hearing the words, Luo Xin smiled and said, These gangsters dare to use an axe in front of the old general. Who doesn't know that the old general's bows and arrows are a must for the Forbidden Army? I haven't practiced for 5 years, and I don't know how it is now. Just don't lose face in front of His Highness. Niu Ben said, but the confidence in his mouth could be heard by others. Xiao Ming smiled and said, The old general's archery is famous all over the world, please. Niu Ben nodded, and took the bow and arrow from Lu Fei. At this time, unlike other Kingzhou army archers, the bow and arrow in Niu Ben's hand was obviously much stronger, and at a glance, He knew that it would take a lot of strength to pull it at this time. I saw Niu Ben didn't dismount from the horse, and directly bent the bow and arrow on the horse. With a whoosh sound, the bow and arrow flew out as quickly as lightning. Before everyone could react, a scream suddenly sounded from the city gate, and the archer who had just provoked fell from the city gate, with an arrow stuck in his chest. Okay. Lu Fei and Luo Xin shouted at the same time. Chen Fu was stunned. He still didn't know who the bull was. After all, the bull couldn't come for a few days, and he couldn't get it in Kangzhou, and the soldiers of the Kangzhou army were also surprised at this time. When this veteran first arrived, many soldiers were unconvinced. After all, in their eyes, Lu Fei was the commander of the Kangzhou army. Now being taken by such a person whom they have never seen before, many people feel uneasy, but at this time, they realized that His Royal Highness King Qi did not use people for nothing. The corners of Xiao Ming's mouth rose slightly. After 2 consecutive bad news, his mood finally improved. At least a veteran Niu Ben was well deserved, and dealing with barbarian cavalry was like having a strong general. The bandits on the city gate were obviously frightened by Niu Ben's move, and the few people who showed up immediately hid behind the battlements. Generally speaking, the range of the bow and arrow is basically about 180 meters, and the effective range is basically about 120 meters. Within this effective range, the bow and arrow can effectively kill the enemy, and this is still a projectile, while the bow and arrow can effectively kill the enemy. The power lies precisely in the projectile. Niu Ben can use the throw to kill the enemy at this distance. This is the real horror. Without decades of practice, it is impossible to do it. However, it can also be seen that Niu Ben's arm strength is different from ordinary people. How is it? If you want me to say, bows and arrows are much more powerful than crossbows. Luo Xin said at this time, Your Highness, your Kangzhou army is equipped with a large number of crossbows instead of bows and arrows. I don't agree with this. At this moment, Niu Ben handed the bow and arrow to Lu Fei, and said with a snort, Your father doesn't know how to teach you. It's only right for His Highness to equip the army with a large number of crossbow arrows. This archer must be at least 3 or 5 years old. Training can only be used on the battlefield, and this single crossbow only needs a little training. The crossbow is much more useful than the bow and arrow when defending the city, and within a short distance, the crossbow arrow is stronger than the bow and arrow, and it shoots accurately. Luo Xin was scolded, and Lu Fei was secretly having fun, looking like he was gloating. In fact, he didn't understand Xiao Ming's approach at first, but he gradually realized it later. Now that the barbarians are going south, they don't have time to train archers. The old general is right. This king is also out of this consideration, and in 2 days you will see something more powerful than bows and arrows, bed crossbows, and catapults. Xiao Ming bought a pass. Hearing this, Niu Ben was surprised. Is this why His Highness is busy in the equipment department these days? Exactly. At that time, it would be better for the old general to dismount more safely. Xiao Ming joked. The bandits in Wu Bei are already like turtles in a urn. They obviously did not expect that even the Kangzhou army would be dispatched in large numbers for a Wu Bei. 3 days later, a carriage, escorted by cavalry, slowly entered the temporary barracks stationed outside Uberg. In the past 3 days, the Kangzhou army and the rebel bandits basically persuaded to surrender, and the rebel bandits scolded them back. The bows and arrows of both sides shot indiscriminately, and Niu Ben went out to kill several archers of the other side. A ladder in the barracks was also ready, but he didn't want to damage the soldiers on the internal wear, and this Wu Beiao had to be taken, because not only was there cement in it, but this Wu Beiao also occupied a major traffic road, posing a great logistical threat to Kangzhou. His Royal Highness, the artillery has arrived. Chen Qi arrived with 12 craftsmen from the equipment division. Looking at the cannons wrapped in layers on the carriage, Xiao Ming smiled happily and said to Niu Ben, Old General, this is this king's secret weapon. Chapter 155, A Shocking Shot. Your Highness, what is it? Lu Fei couldn't wait to ask. It's not a crossbow, it's not a catapult. This question has been hanging in his mind for a few days. Luo Xin also came over. His eyes were still stained with mucus. The confrontation for these 3 days was boring enough at this time. Xiao Ming couldn't hide it anymore. He asked Chen Qi and others to lift the sackcloth immediately. An artillery with a dark body and a metallic cold texture appeared in front of them. Hey, isn't this a torch? Luo Xin looked strange, but this looks much stronger than a torch. Niu Ben carefully looked at the artillery in front of him. Unlike Luo Xin, who came to a conclusion as easily, he walked around the artillery and looked at the artillery carefully. Your Highness, I don't know what this is called. Niu Ben asked. This king calls it a cannon. Xiao Ming said. Luo Xin's words are not wrong. After all, this cannon is the predecessor of the cannon. Nodding his head, Niu Ben circled the cannon again, slapped the cannon body, and looked inside for a while with his head against the muzzle. This cannon is well made, but it can't be compared to a torch. Moreover, the torches are thick and short, with a range of only about 200 meters, so your highness will definitely not use this to attack the city, right? The old general is thoughtful. The reason why this cannon is different from the fire tube is naturally subtle. We will see it later. Luozin, don't be scared to piss your pants. Luozin smiled and said, Your Highness, you can underestimate me. In the army, I can light a torch. Really? Since that's the case, I can only leave this matter to you. Others have no experience. Xiao Ming said solemnly. Luozin grew up in Chang'an City, and his father was the Grand General Luo Quan. His personality was naturally a little frivolous like a son's brother, but he didn't look like other people. It's too simple, he said. If Lu Fei usually grabbed this job, but he knew Xiao Ming very well, and when he saw the wicked smile on Xiao Ming's face, he knew that it was definitely not a good thing. This time, he was honest and didn't argue with Luozin. Luozin wanted to be the first to be the death squad. Chen Qi and others were quite helpless, but they still called dozens of people to help remove the gun from the car and fix it on the gun mount. At this time, the artillery was pointed at the gate of Wubao at an oblique angle. Then Chen Qi unloaded the cannonballs, gunpowder, arquebus, and tools for cleaning the artillery from the car and placed them in front of the artillery on the tower. At this time, Liu Chuang was watching the movements of the King's Zhao army below when he saw a strange thing placed in front of the King's Zhao army. He suddenly had a very ominous feeling. He asked the people around him, when will the tunnel be cleared? Not known to outsiders. In fact, there are 2 tunnels leading to the outside in this Liujiao Wubao. One of which was blown up by him originally. Liu Chuang wanted to escape through another tunnel, but he never wanted to be trapped in this Wubao because some of the tunnels had collapsed due to the disrepair of the tunnel. However, these have been allowing his subordinates to clear the tunnel, and once the clearing is successful, they can escape. In the past few days, the King's Zhao army has been besieging and not attacking, which is exactly what he wants, but this situation seems to be ending today. More than 200 people have been sent to clear the tunnel. Now more than 50 meters have been cleared. It should be soon. I remember that only this section of soil is very soft, and it should be fine. After that, speed up, or we'll be planted here this time, and take away all the food and salaries. Liu Chuang said yes. The man replied, and then said, what about the cement? Take it away too, idiot. How can you take this heavy thing away, and you can't eat it or use it from the capture of the slave? Liu Chuang learned that this thing was called cement, but it was obviously useless to him. The man nodded, turned around and went down the tower. Liu Chuang looked down the city again, and saw a man dressed as a captain who was stabbing inside the strange thing with a long stick. This person is Luozin, and he is clearing the cannon, and what he was holding in his hand was the bore rod for clearing the barrel. At present, the artillery produced by the equipment division is a front-loading smoothbore gun, and the gunpowder and shells must be loaded from the front, and the firing of the artillery requires a certain process. Not random. Xiao Ming understands the reloading procedure of the artillery, so naturally he doesn't need to explore further, because when the artillery was being produced, he asked Chen Qi to prepare all the barrel rods, gun barrels, gunpowder shovels, ignition rods, etc., so as not to be in a hurry at the beginning. Luozin was about to put gunpowder and shells in it, but he stopped him in time. This cannon is not a fire barrel, and the tightness of the fire barrel no longer needs to be mentioned. The shell of this cannon is almost as big as the muzzle, and it can just be stuffed, and this ensures that the ammunition explodes and the shell has sufficient power and range. If there is something like sand mixed into it, it is likely to cause suffocation. According to Xiao Ming's request, the gun chamber was cleaned, and then the gunpowder and shells were filled. At this time, Luozin used a gunpowder shovel to take out a fork full of gunpowder and put it into the gun chamber. The top of the gunpowder shovel is in the shape of a groove, which is exactly what the gun needs to fire at one time. Finally, Luozin stuffed the solid shell into the gun chamber, and then used the chamber rod to compact the shell in gunpowder. Your Highness, can you do it now? Luozin asked. At this time he had never been so precise when using a torch before. Okay. Xiao Ming said the ignition of the torch and the artillery are the same, so Xiao Ming did not teach the rest, but stepped back a few steps and stood far away. Seeing Xiao Ming like this, the others followed suit and took a few steps back. As soon as Luozin turned around, he suddenly realized that he was alone, and he suddenly had an ominous premonition. He looked at Lu Fei, and he had to pull the bastard if he was going to die, and said, Xia Aoilu, come together. Xia Aoilu, please invite me. I'll give you the credit. Lu Fei looked humble. Luo Xin looked at Xiaoming again, and saw that Xiaoming gave him an encouraging look, gritting his teeth. Luo Xin stuffed the match rope into the ammunition chamber through the hole in the back of the gun and the ignition stick. Chen Qi has already lit it for him. It is enough for him to light the match, Your Highness, I ordered. Luo Xin shouted to Xiaoming. Xiaoming nodded. Although he was playing a prank on Luo Xin, he still reminded, don't forget to cover your ears and stand farther away. Luo Xin nodded. Holding a spark stick and lighting the match at this time, Zizi, when it touches the flame, the matchstick quickly begins to burn. The twine twisted by the hump rope has been soaked in oil and burns very quickly. After Luo Xin lit the fire, he took a step back and immediately covered his ears. At this moment, a thunderous roar suddenly rang out. I saw flames and blue smoke coming out of the muzzle, and black cannonballs slammed into the city gate like lightning, and the war horses in the King's Hao army neighed in panic and made a mess. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156. Break the City. Faint smoke drifted in the air, and a strong smell of gunpowder came to the face. Luo Xin, who was in front of the artillery, shuddered at the moment when the loud noise occurred. Although he insisted that he did not sit on the ground, everyone could see that his legs were shaking slightly. Niu Ben and Lu Fei's faces were a little pale. They didn't cover their ears just now. As generals, they still have to face the soldiers, so Luo Xin kept staring during the ignition, posing as if he was not afraid of anything at this moment. Niu Ben couldn't help but glance at Xiaoming gratefully. Fortunately, he was not riding a horse just now, otherwise he would have been thrown to the ground by the frightened warhorse. Looking at the soldiers who were chasing the fleeing horses, Niu Ben looked at the artillery in front of Luo Xin again, and his eyes gradually changed. If this artillery is used in front of the formation, it will surely disturb the horses of the barbarian cavalry. Your Highness, why is this thing so loud? Luo Xin turned to Xiaoming at this moment. At this time, he gradually regained his composure, and pretended to be calm, and talked to Xiaoming as usual. Can you call a cannon if it doesn't ring? Xiaoming said as he approached the cannon. Because of the strong recoil, the position of the artillery moved a bit backwards, and the position needs to be recalibrated for the next launch. It seems that the weight of the artillery base needs to be increased. He looked at the Wu Bao of the Liu family again. At this time, the gate of the Wu Bao of the Liu family was smashed out by artillery. Artillery is a straight line killing, and the aiming is accurate, which is why the artillery can kill a large number of enemies on the battlefield. A line is played, and in ancient times when people were used to dense formations, it was basically similar to the string of candied haws. Although the power of the catapult is great, it is only a point of damage, and it is not enough to deal with soldiers. The siege effect is good. A few more shots and blow the gate of this Wu Bao open to me. The first shot was successfully fired, and the artillery performed well. The gate of Wu Bao is also very thick, but at this time it couldn't withstand the bombardment of artillery solid bullets, and it is estimated that it will basically be torn apart after a few more shots. I'm not coming. Like a cat whose tail was stepped on, Luo Xin did not turn his head back to the army the moment the artillery was fired just now. His scalp was numb. Ha. There was a burst of laughter in the army, which was the laughter of the soldiers, but they were not mocking Luo Xin when they thought that they were scared just now. In fact, the artillery sounded like thunder, and humans and animals had an instinctive fear of this sound. This is also why artillery requires long training. King's Hao was in chaos here, and Liu Chuang and Wu Bao was even more unbearable. At the moment of the loud noise, many gangsters were directly frightened to the ground, and the bandits guarding the city gate were even more chaotic, because as soon as the sound appeared, the gate shattered. It's just that the horror is still behind. A black object directly passes through the gate and smashes the 10 soldiers who are guarding behind it. The first soldier's body and chest are bloody, the second soldier's arm is broken, and the third soldier's head is smashed. It became a paste directly, and the death was very miserable. What the hell is this? It is said that King Qi can do magic. Is it true? The gangsters who survived were all pale. Liu Chuang on the tower was not much better. At this time, someone came up to tell the following situation, and he was shocked at this time. The King's Hao army outside the city seemed to be preparing to use that thing again. They are going to blow open the city gate. What the hell is this? Why is it so terrifying? Liu Chuang exclaimed in his heart, but he, like the other soldiers, believed that this was King Qi's sorcery because this was what he saw with his own eyes. He vaguely understood that it was the explosion of gunpowder. What should I do? Many people at the gate of the city are too scared to approach. The man said for the first time. Liu Chuang felt desperate. Now the tunnel has not been opened, and this strange weapon will soon smash the city gate. Fight them. Liu Chuang said angrily, let the brothers prepare the guys. Yes. The man responded and quickly went down the tower. They knew very well that there was no room for negotiation between these noble children and King Qi. Either you died or I died. Outside the city, Chen Qi was calmly cleaning the barrel and reloading it. Luo Xin was not happy, so he replaced Chen Qi, because Chen Qi and other craftsmen had long been itchy after the artillery was loaded. Chen Qi and the others used the aiming star on the artillery to aim at the gate of Wubao. Again, boom. There was another sound, and there was another hole in the gate of Wubao behind the artillery. Niu Ben and Xiaoming stood side by side. After 5 years of hard labor in the mines, Niu Ben believed that nothing could make him feel up and down, but today his heart, that had been silent for a long time, was once again turbulent. He said to Xiaoming, no wonder your highness dares to guard Kangxiao alone. With this weapon, it will definitely catch the barbarians by surprise. I am afraid that the barbarians will encounter a hard bone this time. The old general values this artillery so much, I feel at ease. This artillery is only the first one. Subsequent artillery pieces will be installed on the gate of Kangxiao to resist the barbarians. Xiaoming said. Niu Ben nodded and asked, Your Highness, how many artillery pieces can be produced in a month, and how many gates can Kangxiao City have when the barbarians attack the city? At most 50, this is still when the materials are sufficient. Xiaoming frowned. The production of an artillery requires a lot of procedures. Even if there is an iron mold, it is not a matter of a day or two to cast an artillery. It's May, and he doesn't have much time to produce artillery. If there is enough ammunition, 50 gates is enough. Niu Ben said, as long as you destroy the barbarian siege vehicles and cloud ladders, the barbarians will never be able to attack Kangxiao City. Niu Ben mentioned the key point. The most important thing in sieging a city is to break open the city gate, and breaking the city gate basically relies on siege equipment. Soldiers cannot climb the city tower with only their hands and feet, and this artillery has a long range, great power, and can shoot accurately. When the time comes, the siege equipment will be shot wherever it is. Enough for the barbarians to drink apart. When the two were talking, there was another boom, and only Chen Qi's voice was heard. The door is open. The door is open. Xiaoming looked at it, and sure enough, there was a gap in the city gate of Wubao. And a hole was broken in the middle of the city gate. Presumably the position of the door bolt was hit. Niu Ben saw it at the same time, and then he drew his knife and shouted, Kill! The Kangxiao army, who had been holding back for 3 days outside the city, had long been angry with this group of bandits, and at this time rushed towards Wubao like a hungry wolf on the tower. Liu Chuang looked at the silver torrent of steel, and immediately turned around and went down the tower. The Kangxiao army was 5 times as big as themselves, and they were still wearing this armor that looked invulnerable, so their defeat was decided. Chapter 157. On the battlefield, the sound of fighting overshadowed everything. The golden sunlight reflected on the soldiers' shiny armor like a jagged lake. Standing on a high place and watching the 5,000 regular moment charge, the shock of this blockbuster made Xiaoming's heart burst with enthusiasm, and he could not wait to rush up. It's just that his going up at this time is nothing more than causing trouble for Niu Ben, because when he kills the enemy, he still has to take care of himself. When the soldiers rushed to Wubao, the formation began to change in Lu Fei's loud voice. The training in the past few months has made the soldiers used to changing formations, and even the collective charge is methodical. At the gate of the city, the sword and shield fighters quickly formed a formation to resist the arrows coming from the city gate, and the crossbowmen followed up and used 3-stage shooting to fight back. This shooting method is basically similar to the shooting method of the musket team, because the crossbow arrow needs to be reloaded after shooting. Since the crossbow is difficult to pull, some soldiers have to put the crossbow on the ground, fix it with their feet, and then pull and reload. This process is very slow, and it is not as flexible as bows and arrows, so there is a 3-stage shooting method at this time. The crossbowman in the first row quickly retreated after shooting, and the crossbowman in the second row fired, followed by the third row, and so on. Although the bandits in the city gate were composed of children of the wealthy clan, they were also not trained. The archers couldn't fight back after the first round because they were facing round after round of crossbow bolts, giving them no time to shoot again in just an instant. Most of the archers among the bandits were killed or injured. Seeing that the situation was not right, the remaining bandits did not dare to pile up at the gate of the crowded city, but ran like Wubao. These gangsters are quite smart. Lu Fei spat. Don't underestimate the enemy. Now that the bandits are scattered, It is even more difficult to catch them, so let the soldiers search in groups of 100. Niu Ben said now these rioters clearly knew that facing the King Zhao army against the enemy would only lead to worse loss, so they fled to Wubao and used the buildings in Wubao to fight against the King Zhao army. After receiving Niu Ben's order, Lu Fei shouted squad. At this time, the King Zhao army that entered Wubao immediately divided into small formations of 100 men. In this small formation, swordsmen, crossbowmen, and spearmen have everything, which is exactly the combination of long-range and long-range attacks. Seeing this kind of formation change, Xiao Ming nodded secretly. This is already quite the meaning of a modern street fighting team. After another evolution, the King Zhao army entered Wubao 5 times the enemy. Full body plate armor, Nobin command. Such a small-scale conflict is only a matter of time. After waiting outside the city gate for a while, the city gate was occupied by the King Zhao army at this time. Xiao Ming walked towards Wubao. Generally speaking, the area of Wubao is not very large. Even if the gang of bandits are scattered, they will not be able to run far. When he was at the gate of the city, Xiao Ming could still hear the sound of fighting inside, but gradually only the neat footsteps of the King Zhao army were left. His Royal Highness, the remnants of the bandits have basically been eliminated, and now there is still a wave of bandits who have escaped into the tunnel, and there is no way to enter for the time being. Niu Ben walked over and said, at this time authentic? Did you say it was bombed? Xiao Ming asked strangely. There is another one. It is estimated that these gangsters want to use this tunnel to escape, so they will attack Wubao so boldly, but this tunnel does not know what is going on. It seems to be blocked. Niu Ben laughed while talking. The two reached the tunnel where the bandits escaped, only to see a dark hole below, which could only accommodate one person. You timid little fellow, come up with something for me. Lu Fei was scolding HMPH, what kind of heroes are you guys who bully the little ones more? Come down if you have the ability. A voice came from the tunnel. Luo Xin frowned and said, it's a little troublesome. This tunnel can only hold one, so it's going to be broken by all of them. The battle depends on the formation, and every general knows it clearly. This situation is indeed tricky. It can't be delayed. I don't know where this tunnel leads. They must be opening the tunnel at this time. If they all run away, they will come out to make trouble. Niu Ben said angrily, I'll go down first, you all come with me at this time. Xiao Ming said with a smile, don't be impulsive, old generals, isn't it easy to deal with them? This king can let them come out and surrender themselves. His Royal Highness, it's not that Lu Fei is disrespectful. You're talking a lot, right? Could it be that your highness should use artillery? Lu Fei laughed. Xiao Ming has always had a good relationship with his officials, so everyone can say anything. He scolded. Then let's make a bet that if I let them come out by themselves, you will give me the skin of the tiger you hunted. Lu Fei was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, I knew that His Highness liked the tiger skin in my house, not to mention the tiger skin. I will also give the tiger whip to His Highness. You'd better keep the wine and drink it yourself. Xiao Ming said with a smile. Then he said to Luo Xin, go find some firewood and straw. Luo Xin nodded and immediately asked people to look for them. There are many of these things in Wubao. Niu Ben stroked his beard and smiled. He immediately understood Xiao Ming's thoughts. It seemed that the tiger skin of Lu Fei's family could not be preserved. After a while, Luo Xin found firewood and straw. Xiao Ming asked the soldiers to pile up all the things at the entrance of the tunnel. At this time, he let the soldiers set fire, and at the same time kept dripping water inside to prevent the flames from burning. Suddenly, a thick smoke came out from the firewood. The purpose of Xiao Ming's actions is to catch them alive, because he also wants to understand how these people bombed the tunnel and where the gunpowder came from. A soldier kept fanning the thick smoke into the tunnel, and after a while, a coughing sound came from the tunnel. Lu Fei's face turned green. He knew that he was talking too much this time, and he secretly hated his fault for liking thorns. Now even the housekeeper Wu Lu Xiao Ming had seen this trick against the enemy in the tunnel on TV, but it was used by the enemy at that time. Cough cough cough. The violent coughing continued to intensify, and there were bursts of curses in the tunnel, many of which urged the people in front to get out quickly. Then the first man emerged from the smoke. After the first person came out, the second person and the third person came out of the tunnel one after another. Every time one came out, the King Zhao army would catch one. After a while, all 100 people were arrested, and the last person even passed out on the ground. No one came out of the tunnel. At this time, Xiao Ming asked, where's Liu Trang? Chen Fu pointed at a disgraced man and said, Your Highness, he is Liu Trang. Xiao Ming saw that this was a fair-skinned person with a scholarly temperament. He walked up to Liu Trang and said, You are very courageous. You even took Wu Bao and this king's cement. Liu Chuang knew that he was going to die, and said angrily, HMPH, King Ho, if you want to kill you, you have to be slaughtered. Listen to your words, and don't talk nonsense. Chapter 158 Cannonball. Your bones are hard enough, but Lu Fei likes to break people with hard bones. The most Liu Chuang's arrogant attitude made Lu Fei furious. This Liu Chuang's reputation is very clear to Lu Fei. Although the Liu family is not as powerful as the Wang family and King Zhao, the Liu family's notoriety is louder than the other four families. It is rumored that the ancestors of the Liu family were not clean. They were robbers who made a living by robbery. Later, they gathered some money to buy land here, and the manor gradually became the so-called wealthy family today. But even so, the Liu family is still very angry, often bullying the weak, and the people nearby are all complaining. What's more, for this thief today, he also lost Xiaoming's precious tiger skin, and he was even more angry at Liu Chuang since Xiaoming suddenly started to encircle and suppress the wealthy. Liu Chuang has taken many of the wealthy who escaped to become pirates. During this period, there have been many murders and scams. Now that Xiaoming is caught, he can't live anymore because of this. His heart was overwhelmed, but he showed a look that he was not afraid of death. Even if he died, he would set an example for other wealthy clans and inspire them to continue to make trouble. Seeing that Lu Fei rolled up his sleeves and was about to fight, Xiaoming stopped him and said, "Wait, this way of dying is too cheap for him. Since this Liu Yuan way is so arrogant and righteous, this king has to give it to him. He prepares a decent death." From the encirclement and suppression of the wealthy family to now, Xiaoming has encountered many wealthy families who are not afraid of death. This makes Xiaoming a little surprised, but after thinking about it, he understood now the relationship between him and the wealthy clan is on the same level. Either you die or I die. Speaking of which, it involves the survival of the wealthy clan, and these wealthy clans will naturally defend their own interests with death. Especially in the past millennium, the clansmen have dominated the government, claiming to be orthodox, and constantly consolidating the power of the clans in the eyes of the wealthy clan. What Xiaoming is doing is nothing short of going against the sky. Relatively speaking, in the eyes of the wealthy clan, Xiaoming is extremely vicious. After figuring this out, Xiaoming smiled bitterly. The hard road ahead is probably just beginning. In the hearts of the wealthy family of the Yu Kingdom, he was basically the first heir to the throne to be eliminated, because a pig would definitely not let a pig slaughterer be the leader from then on. He estimated that he would have to face all kinds of difficulties and life and death traps from the tycoons of the great Yu Kingdom. However, he already has a way to deal with it. To deal with a solidified class, it is the most effective way to cultivate a new class to fight against. Bah, I don't want a decent way to die, it's extremely hypocritical. Wait, Xiaoming, the nobles of the 6 states will not stop here, and the nobles of the world will not stop. You just wait for the world to rise up and attack them. Liu Chuang cursed loudly. You bastard, I'll cut the tongue of your dog slave now. Lu Fei was furious. Xiaoming's expression is calm and daily. For him, if he does not reform, he will die. There is still a chance for reform, and he will develop in an orderly manner. If he has the ability to reach the sky, he will sooner or later become a victim of the competition for the throne. The last assassination had sounded the alarm for him. If there was no big family to blame, he would not believe it, but it was impossible to find out which rich family cooperated. But this matter, he can keep watching. Looking at Li Chuang, who is in a hurry, Xiaoming said lightly, if you refuse before seeing what kind of death is to be expected, it will be a waste of the king's will. You thieves are all stained with the blood of innocent people. The king should have chopped off your heads 10,000 times. Then he turned to Chen Qi and said, how many shells are left in the artillery? Reporting to your highness, there are still 32. Chen Qi said. Xiaoming nodded and said with a sneer, then let this Liu Yuanwei, who is not afraid of death, understand what a cannonball is. The punishment of gun execution began in the Mughal Empire in ancient India, which was established by descendants of Mongolia. It is said that this torture was specially used to deal with rebels, and the effect was shocking, but in modern times it was brought to the extreme by a certain head of state. Suddenly, I remembered that this method was not because Xiaoming had the tendency to become a tyrant, but because he wanted to use this deterrent effect to make Liu Chuang explain where the gunpowder came from, because Liu Chuang, who is like this now, can't be defeated by a mental man. Even if he uses punishment, he may not say it. He never underestimated the ancients. Because of the prevalence of narrow thinking in ancient times, there are still some hard bones. And it is better to use the criminal law like Ling Chi cannonball. Combined with Xiaoming's inquiry about the number of artillery shells, Lu Fei suddenly realized something. and he couldn't help but feel a chill behind his back. Luo Xin is also the same, looking strange. On the other hand, Niu Ben looked as usual. In his opinion, this kind of punishment was quite pleasant. To deal with the rebels, the tools of criminal law in the dungeon of Dao Kingdom filled a room. Liu Chuang naturally didn't understand what a cannonball was, but when he and the rest of the bandits were escorted to the weapons that had just attacked the city, his expression changed at this time. The soldiers of the King's Hao army tied up all the remaining bandits and stood in rows under the wall of Wu Bao. At the same time, the person dressed as a craftsman began to operate the strange thing, and the black muzzle was aimed at his subordinates. Xiaoming noticed Liu Chuang's expression, and he asked, "Where did the gunpowder to blow up the city wall come from?" "Hey, I don't know," Liu Chuang said coldly. Xiaoming knew that this would be the result. He no longer asked, but stood behind the artillery with Niu Ben and others. Lu Fei arranged all the gangsters in order under the city wall, turned back and said to Xiaoming, "Your Highness, let's start with the first one. This person is Liu Wei, Liu Chuang's most capable servant. This person is extremely vicious, and his subordinates are extremely vicious. No less than 30 lives were lost, and he once occupied other people's wives and daughters, and even poisoned the woman's husband, and failed to death the infant boy." Although Luo Xin was born in a wealthy family, he was also jealous of hatred like an enemy. Otherwise, he would not have been wrong with Xiaoming all the time. Hearing this, he said angrily, "Such a person should be cut with 1,000 cuts. This is simply cheap for him." "Shut up, Your Highness cares about himself, talk too much," Niu Ben said. He was very clear about Xiaoming's thoughts. Slowly nodding, Xiaoming turned to Chen Qi. "Let's start." Lu Fei's words just now made Chen Qi furious. He adjusted the angle of the artillery. This time, the position of the artillery was pulled within 60 meters, which made it easier to hide. At this time, Liu Chuang was brought to the muzzle of the artillery, in order to disturb his mind. When everything was ready, Chen Qi lit the match. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the fire and light flashed, and the cannonball shot straight at the city wall. With a bang, the cannonball slammed into the city wall, and a half-meter hole appeared on the city wall, only half a meter away from Liu Wei. The shell did not hit, but Liu Wei had already fallen to the ground. Liu Chuang, who was standing at the muzzle, shook, his ears buzzed, and his face was as pale as paper. Chapter 159. "Mr. Liu, how powerful is this cannon?" Xiaoming's voice reached Liu Chuang's ears through the smoke of the burning gunpowder, which made him despair for a while. Can King Qi with such a murderous weapon still be defeated? This idea flashed in his mind and was soon broken again. In front of the city gate, Liu Wei's horse begging for mercy suddenly came, and the fear of death passing by made him almost mad. "I think Liu Wei would be more willing to reveal the source of the gunpowder now, but if you still want to die with dignity, I will give you this chance." Xiaoming's voice seemed to have no waves. Liu Chuang laughed twice. He was defeated, and the moment the artillery exploded, fear filled his body. "The formula for this gunpowder was passed down by my Liu family's ancestors," Liu Chuang said decadently. "I hope King Qi can give me a whole body." Superstition prevails among the people of Dao. All the people believe in the theory of reincarnation. Many people believe that only a complete body can be reincarnated again. Therefore, death without a whole body is a vicious curse. Here the half-meter wide pothole on the city wall made Liu Chuang understand that if he didn't break an arm and a leg, he would probably be beaten into minced meat. "What I'm asking is, where does the saltpeter come from?" Xiaoming asked. This is what he really cares about now, whether or not the King of Shu is a stumbling block. The problem Xiaoming faces now is the shortage of gunpowder materials, which will cause him to not have enough gunpowder to deal with the barbarians. "Hey, if your highness wants to, just dig in the cesspool." Liu Chuang laughed, frowning his brows. Xiaoming was disappointed after all. He thought that Liu Chuang and others had the location of the saltpeter mine, but he did not expect that the saltpeter was obtained through this method. He waved his hand and said to Niu Ben, "Kill them all and leave them with a whole body." Niu Ben nodded and signaled to Lu Fei and Luo Xin. The two understood. The sword light flashed, and Liu Chuang fell in a pool of blood. The surrounding soldiers looked indifferent. Such a wealthy family died. 1,000, 10,000 is not a pity. The artillery was tested, and the siege of Wu Bao was relieved. It was time to withdraw troops and return to the city. Now Xiaoming must find a way to solve the problem of nitrate. It is impossible to find the saltpeter mine immediately, but Liu Chuang's words made him determined to find nitrate from the cesspool. "Let Chen Fu personally escort the cement to Kangzhou City," Xiaoming said to Niu Ben. "Old general, although the 6 states have been wiped out, there are still many remnants in chaos. I hope the old general will go to encircle and suppress the 6 states, So as not to disturb the 6 states His Royal Highness, this matter can be handed over to the last general. It is my duty to raise troops for 1,000 days and use them for a while. Niu Ben said with his fists folded. Xiao Ming nodded. Zhang Xingcheng was originally responsible for this matter, but the barbarians went south to break his plan. Now Zhang Xingcheng is mainly responsible for the repair of Kangzhou City after the soldiers returned to the city. More than 10 days passed in order to encircle and suppress Liu Chuang's group, but at least the artillery test was successfully completed, and then the equipment department could fully produce artillery, and he has to continue to solve the problem of the saltpeter. The artillery is one of them, and he also needs a lot of bulk gunpowder to make the gunpowder can. Originally, he still held a glimmer of hope, thinking that Liu Chuang knew the location of the saltpeter mine, but now his hope has been dashed. However, he was not without gains. At least Liu Chuang proved one point. It is feasible to make nitrate and then make gunpowder, and there is a pit underground, but the amount is very small. But now mosquitoes are meat no matter how small they are. When he returned to the palace, he immediately called Lu Tong over. Is there saltpeter in the pit? Lu Tong blinked in disbelief. For Xiao Ming, there are still many ways to extract soil nitrate in the technology library, and the principle is very clear. Generally speaking, the soil near pigsties and toilets in rural areas often contains a large amount of organic matter. After these organic substances are corrupted, nitric acid is generated by the action of nitrifying bacteria. Nitric acid further interacts with arsenic, calcium and magnesium in the soil to form potassium nitrate, and its calcium and magnesium nitrate, which is fire nitrate in general. The fluffy white mold that precipitated on the dirt walls of pigsties and toilets had high potassium nitrate levels, sometimes as high as 75%. He told Lu Tong about the formation principle of saltpeter. At this time, if Lu Tong understood something, he nodded slowly. This method is a little more troublesome, but that's the only way to do it now. Let's get over this difficulty first. Xiao Ming said if the saltpeter mine could be used, no one would go to the toilet to find saltpeter, and he was forced to do so in addition to directly looking for the pits and saltpeter on the surface of the pigsty soil wall. Xiao Ming also asked Lu Tong to dig the old soil and plant ash under the toilet to cook, so that the saltpeter crystals can also be extracted. His Royal Highness, this is not a problem. After you say that, I remember that there is such a thing on my kennel, but it's too little. How many kennels need to be found? Lu Tong asked. Xiao Ming already had an idea in his mind, and now he can only mobilize the majority of the people. Let Lu Tong go back to prepare the utensils. Xiao Ming asked Fan Zheng to come to the palace, and he personally wrote a manuscript and published it in the newspaper. The content of this manuscript is to mobilize the people to find fire nitrate from the pit and hand it over to the local government. Anyone who provides fire nitrate will be paid 1 penny per caddy. The next day, the news spread with the newspaper immediately, and reporters from various states dispatched at the same time, went down to the county, and the village conveyed the content of the newspaper to the people. Can the white hair growing in this hut be sold for money? In Zhujia village, Zhu Wuliu asked the person who had just finished reading the newspaper in surprise. His elder brother Zhu Sansi had already gone to Kingzhou City and successfully entered the Kingzhou army. Now there are only elder brothers Zhu Yi and Zhu Xiaomi and him at home. Now that the food can be harvested soon, the family is full of hope, but before the food is harvested, his family is still very poor, but it must have been much better in the past. And after Zhu Sansi entered the Kingzhou army, the local government office sent a stone of food and a piece of cloth to the family. These things made many people in the village envious. No one would have thought that this soldier's government office would also send food to eat. In the past, he was directly arrested and served as a soldier. Because of this, many hesitant people in the village went to join the army, because every time the government office sent something home, it was a matter of honor and lied on their faces. In addition to his second brother, his eldest brother is now on the dock to unload and load goods for the merchant ships coming and going. In the past 6 months, the number of merchant ships going to and from Kingzhou Wharf has increased sharply, and many people are required to carry goods. Naturally, the wages have risen again and again. Zhujia village is not far from the wharf, and the young men in the slack season basically go to the wharf. Compared with the eldest and second brothers, Zhu Wuliu has been helping to look after the fields at home, but he also wants to earn some money. Therefore, he was immediately moved. Chapter 160 National Action. The warm wind floated, blowing the golden waves of wheat in the fields. Zhujia village, which is close to the wheat fields, was hot at this time, and every household was busy looking for fire nitrate in their own cesspool. Zhu Wuliu ran the fastest. At this time, he already had a large amount of white powder in his hand. He carefully searched the kennel at home. Zhou Wuliu carefully wrapped the white powder and immediately went to King Zhao City. Went Zhou Wuliu, go take a look first. If you can really sell it, we'll go. Yes, you run fast, we will wait for you to come back. Many people in the village are digging, and many people are watching. The people who have suffered so much do not fully believe in the government office. Although the farm orders and the production team brought them some benefits, the deep-rooted impression of the government office in their hearts was difficult to change. For a while they are afraid that they are just giving away things in vain. Zhou Wuliu's footsteps did not stop. His brother Zhou Sansi was in the army. He believed in the current King Zhao government more than others, and the current King Qi holding the white powder tightly. Zhou Wuliu arrived in King Zhao City and went directly to the government office. At the entrance of the government office, a boy of the same grade as him seemed to be waiting for something. Zhou Wuliu hesitated and stepped forward and asked, "Is there a purchase of fire nitrate here?" This young man is Lu Tong's subordinate. In order to identify the fire, Lu Tong sent the surplus people to the prefectures to be responsible for the acquisition. That's right. The boy said in surprise. So far, no one has come to pay saltpeter here, and this young man is the first. Zhou Wuliu breathed a sigh of relief, handed the fire nitrate over, and said, "I just found so many." There was a scale in front of the boy. He weighed the things that Zhou Wuliu brought, and said, "It's 5 taels in total, because you are the first." His Highness said, "The saltpeter brought by the first 100 people is 20. When Yijin purchases to encourage capital, this is 10 pennies. Take it well." When the 10 copper plates arrived, Zhou Wuliu smiled happily. At this time, the teenager said to Zhou Wuliu, "By the way, there is another way to get more saltpeter. Do you want to learn it?" "Think." Zhou Wuliu agreed without hesitation. The temperature of the copper coins in his hand made him wholeheartedly believe in the King Zhao government. The boy nodded, and told Zhou Wuliu the method of digging out the old soil and mixing the grass and tree ash to make fire nitrate. Zhou Wuliu nodded and immediately returned to the village. At this time, seeing Zhou Wuliu coming back, many villagers gathered around and asked, "Wuliu, how is it?" The copper coins in Zhou Wuliu's hand lit up. "I just said that our Highness will not deceive the people, and the people from the government office said that the first 100 people who go there will be purchased for 20 cents per pound." As soon as these words came out, the people surrounding Zhou Wuliu immediately ran away. When they got home, they picked up the saltpeter at home and ran to King Zhao City in an instant. Hundreds of people seemed to be driven away by dogs. Zhou Wuliu smiled, holding the copper coins in his hand, thinking about how to use the money he earned. At this time, the news that Honir could really pay back the money spread out, and more people joined in the search and production of Honir. The first batch of saltpeter arrived after a half-month shortage of materials for the chemical laboratory in the workshop area of King Zhao City. Although the saltpeter had a strong smell of urine, it was generally better than nothing. "His Royal Highness, you are really amazing. You solved the problem of saltpeter like this." He, the King of Shu, still wants to take advantage of His Highness. Now it seems that he will have nowhere to sell this saltpeter in the future. Lu Tong was almost fainted by a sack of saltpeter, but he still danced happily. Xiaoming smiled bitterly. If he could use normal saltpeter, who would go to the cesspit to find it? And this is not a long-term solution. After all, the formation of saltpeter also takes time. After all, this folk method of extracting saltpeter cannot replace the saltpeter mine this time. He disclosed this method of soil salt, one for emergency, and one for disgusting the King of Shu. When the people of the entire Great Yu Kingdom know how to get saltpeter, he will see where the saltpeter in this Shu area is sold. Now that there is enough saltpeter, we need to prepare as much gunpowder as possible. Xiaoming ordered. Regarding the King of Shu, his letter to Chang'an has not come back, and he does not know how Xiao Wangxun will deal with this matter. But in any case, he passed the hurdle. For the time being there is enough gunpowder, and now he will think about how to achieve the task of throwing the gunpowder can. Xiaoming has his own thoughts on this powder jar, and weapons are never single on the battlefield. This artillery was used to deal with catapults and to kill enemies farther away, but this gunpowder pot was different. It was to kill the barbarian army who gathered under the city and climbed the ladder. And the power of this clay pot is that it can be filled with a large amount of gunpowder. If the gunpowder explodes, it is just a shock wave, which can make the barbarians turn their heads. This is different from the linear killing of artillery, but it belongs to range killing. In view of the shortcoming of the clay pot being fragile, Xiaoming prepared to wrap a thick layer of straw on the outside of the pot and bundle it up layer by layer. As long as a small catapult is erected on the city wall at that time, the long-range artillery can be fully realized. The catapult is within 200 meters, and the short-range coverage of the throwing of the soldiers allows the barbarians to enjoy the feast of gunpowder anywhere. While thinking about this crazy defensive tactics, Xiao Ming went to the equipment department. Chen Qi is very busy now, but there is nothing he can do. This matter has to be left to him. At the same time in Chang'an, a group of unwelcome people arrived in Chang'an City. These people were barbarian messengers from the Golden Horde. Their arrival broke the calm atmosphere of Chang'an City. From the first-rank officers to the people of Limen, everyone was spying on the purpose of these barbarian messengers, and this will also mean that in the future, the Great Yu Kingdom and the Golden Horde will be at war and peace. 3 envoys, please go to the inn to rest for a while. Tomorrow, His Majesty will summon 3 envoys from afar. The messenger responsible for entertaining the barbarians was Zhaoxing, the minister of Honglu Temple. And Honglu Temple was in charge of handling the affairs of foreign messengers in the Great Yu Kingdom. Tomorrow. Today we are going to see your emperor, which has delayed our important affairs. Be careful, Doghead. The barbarian envoy who came this time was tall and tall, with his hair draped behind his back, with tiny braids hanging down on both sides, golden rings on his ears shimmering with cold light, his face dark and stern. With him were 2 guards in leather armor and felt hats, and it was one of the guards who made a rude remark at this time. Zhaoxing was a little frightened when he was drunk. This barbarian tribe is very powerful, and the officials of Chang'an's upper and lower ranks are very arrogant, and Zhaoxing is of course one of them. This is when he saw this barbarian messenger, his legs trembled and his mind was flustered. For fear of making these barbarian uncles lively, Master Messenger, Zhaoxing said with a flattering smile, Xiaoguan is also conveying the Emperor's will. It is really incompetent. I also asked the 3 adults to forgive me. I will arrange wine and food for the 3 adults right now, can I? Chapter 161 Humiliation. There are also beautiful women, otherwise be careful of your dog's life. The messenger, who had been silent for a while, glanced at Zhaoxing and said. Zhaoxing was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he pleaded guilty again and again, and then slowly retreated. Seeing Zhaoxing's obedience, one of the guards said, Taiji, this time in Chang'an, we should enjoy it before going back. It is said that Chang'an is not only good wine, but also beautiful women. That's right, these southerners are afraid to die when they see us, like dogs seeing wolves, said another guard. The barbarian messenger sneered, sooner or later, I will turn this place into my bedroom, and then I will choose all the beauties in the world like the dog emperor of the Nandarin. At that time, Taiji shouldn't forget us. The guard smiled wickedly. The barbarian messenger laughed and nodded, and suddenly his expression became serious. It's a pity that my father is old, and now I have no ambition. If I become a Khan, why waste my words with Diu? Taiji's words are justified. Our noble prairie people will go wherever they want to go like eagles in the sky. The guard laughed. Another guard said, but Beishan Taiji, Taiji has always been dissatisfied with you. You have to be careful. The barbarian messenger nodded, his eyes narrowed slightly. How can that cowardly person be my opponent? I am worried about others. The 3 of them were talking when Zhaoxing, who had just left, turned back and said, the 3 messengers, Jiuk and Miran Xiaoguan have already given their orders. Please invite the 3 messengers. Beishan snorted at this moment, pushed Zhaoxing away, and strode out of the inn. Zhaoxing was pushed and staggered, but he still had a smile on his face. He belonged to King Zhao, and he did not dare to be disrespectful to the barbarians. What's more, the moment he came in, the guard called this person Taiji, and this Taiji means prince among barbarians. According to the appearance of this person, the messenger who came this time seems to be Beishan, the youngest son of the Tian Khan of the Golden Horde. It is rumored that this Beishan Taiji can conquer and fight well, and all the countries in the western regions have changed their colors. When the barbarians were on the westward expedition, half of the small countries in the western regions were captured by him. Thinking of this, Zhaoxing squeezed out a flattering look. Maybe in the future, King Zhao will rely on this Taiji. Early the next day, Xiao Wangxun saw the barbarian messenger who came to Chang'an. He knew the news yesterday, but he deliberately delayed seeing these barbarian messengers in order to beat the arrogance of these barbarians. I just don't know if this barbarian messenger is dissatisfied. In the morning, Zhaoxing came to report, and in the evening, all the singers who served the 3 of them died, and their appearance was terrifying. When Xiao Wangxun heard the words, an anger rose in his heart. Although these singers were only lowly in his eyes, they were also the citizens of the Great Yu Kingdom. These barbarians were killing him if they wanted to kill him. However, after learning that this person might be Taiji Beishan of the barbarian tribe, Xiao Wangxun suppressed his anger. The 3 messengers are up this time, and I apologize for their poor reception. Xiao Wangxun spoke first. The barbarian nation is strong and powerful, and the Dao nation is insufficient. So Xiao Wangxun is not willing to fight against the barbarian unless he has to thank you, Emperor Dao. The reception was good last night, but the singers couldn't stand the toss and died. Bei Shan's voice was arrogant. Hearing this, Luo Quan was furious and was about to step forward, but when he saw Xiao Wangxuan's warning eyes, he stepped back. The messenger is fierce. Xiao Wangxuan pretended to smile. I don't know why the messenger came to Chang'an this time. Bei Shan glanced at the officials contemptuously. Except for a few officials who looked unhappy, most of them looked flattering in his heart. He despised the great Yu kingdom more and more this time. In the name of Khan, I will hand over the credentials to your majesty. First, I hope his majesty will cede Kang Zhao, King Zhao, Ye Zhao, Deng Zhao, and Lei Zhao to us, and secondly, an annual tribute of 1 million taels of silver will be added every year. Third, send the princess and the Khan's most beloved Bishan Taiji and relatives. If his majesty agrees, the Khan promises not to meet the soldiers of the Great Yu state for 10 years. Fourth, from then on, the emperor of the Great Yu state will become a vassal of the Khan, calling himself the emperor. If not, 3 months later, my Khan will personally lead the army to capture Kangzhou city. At that time, not only Kangzhou city will not be spared, but other prefectures and counties will also be spared. Bei Shan said. It is not clear that his identity has been guessed. As soon as these words came out, there was a lot of discussion in the entire court, and Luo Quan clenched his hands tightly, gnashing his teeth in hatred. However, at the same time, there were many ministers showing delighted expressions, whispering to each other and nodding secretly. Xiao Wangxuan almost fainted with anger, ceded land, paid indemnity, and had to marry. Since Dei became a state, he has never been humiliated by barbarians like him. A burst of anger rushed to his head, and he suddenly passed out. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Xiao Huangman, serving next to Xiao Wangxuan, was shocked at this time. Fiji said to Bishan, I also asked the 3 envoys to go back. His Majesty is ill, and when he wakes up, he will answer the 3 envoys no. If you agree, I will send the princess here. If you don't agree, see you in Kangzhou in 3 months. After Bei Shan finished speaking, he laughed and left. The barbarian messenger left, and within a few days, there were rumors. The emperor at that time seemed to be very angry with the barbarian messengers, and he was bedridden due to illness. This news made the people of Chang'an sigh for a while. Really useless. In the Bishu Pavilion, concubine Zhen was serving Xiao Wangxuan with a bowl of lotus seed porridge. At this time, Xiao Wangxuan's face was sallow, and his expression was unhappy. If the barbarians going south were just speculation, then the arrival of the barbarian messengers this time can be said to have brought this matter to the fore. How can I eat it? On that day, the barbarian messenger openly proposed to let me cede the land of Kangzhou, King Zhao, and Deng Zhao, and let the emperors of all dynasties after the Great Yu state call themselves emperors of the barbarians, and add 1 million 2-year-old tribute. In addition, they also asked the Great Yu kingdom to send a princess and relatives, while the barbarians promised not to use troops against the Great Yu kingdom for 10 years. After a pause, Xiao Wangxuan said, however, this is not the most irritating thing. The most irritating thing is that most of the courtiers are now writing letters to ask me to agree to the conditions of the barbarians. Speaking of this, Xiao Wangxuan became angrier the more he thought about it. After hearing this, concubine Zhen sighed in a low voice and said, so are these ministers. How can you agree to such a humiliating condition? Yeah, how many people in the Great Yu kingdom are still tough? Xiao Wangxuan sighed, and then he remembered something and said, concubine Zhen, I remember a letter from King Qi. What did the letter say? These days, Xiao Wangxuan has been in bed all the time, and all government affairs are handled by Fiji at this time. He suddenly remembered the letter that Xiao Ming had sent 10 days ago. Your Majesty, the dragon's body is the most important thing. Your Majesty should not bother about this matter. Concubine Zhen sighed faintly. Chapter 162 Preparations before the war. Bishu Pavilion is fresh and elegant, quiet and peaceful, just like concubine Zhen's temperament. I do not know since when, Xiao Wangxuan began to get tired of those vulgar fans, and craved this peaceful tranquility, where he seemed to be able to temporarily forget all his troubles. Maybe he was old, maybe he was too tired, but he always remembered when he was a prince these days. At that time, he had King Wei, King Ning, and many other princes by his side, but now, he only has a cold throne, the throne he was crazy about all his life. If the throne belongs to King Ning now, would the Great Yu kingdom still suffer such humiliation? A terrifying voice came to his mind, and he was driven away in horror when he came back to his senses. There was a cold sweat on his back with a wry smile. He is now facing the credentials of the barbarians and the endless quarrels of the ministers. Looking carefully at concubine Zhen's drooping slender eyelashes, Xiao Wangsun seemed to have made up his mind. He said, now that King Qi is carrying a heavy burden, how can I ignore it? Now his affairs are state affairs. Concubine Zhen sighed and said, there is nothing else. It seems that there is no saltpeter or the like on the fief. It is said that all the merchants are not selling this thing to King Zhao now. Saltpeter? Xiao Wangsun frowned. Is King Qi making gunpowder? I didn't expect him to be the city. Now I'm also surprised. Ming'er seems to know a lot of things now, and I don't know where he learned it from. Concubine Zhen fed Xiao Wangsun with lotus seed porridge. Xiao Wangsun shook his head. No matter where he learned it from, it is always better than being inexperienced before. Then he said, the saltpeter in the Great Yu country is only in the saltpeter caves in Shu, and it must be the king of Shu who is in the way. The two were at odds when they were in Chang'an. At this time, the king of Shu knew that he needed saltpeter, and he must have it, made a fuss out of it, knowing that his son is no better than his father. Xiao Wangsun is very clear about the character of the king of Shu. Hey, at this time, the princes are still so intrigued. Concubine Zhen frowned slightly, and couldn't help being a little angry. Xiao Wangsun rarely sees concubine Zhen's angry look, so he can't help but feel a little strange, but he said, this is just my guess. Even if it was the king of Shu's advice, I probably won't admit it if I ask him. Then what should we do? This saltpeter seems to be very important to Ming'er. Concubine Zhen worried. It doesn't matter. I will transfer all the gunpowder and saltpeter from the Department of Equipment to him, and then order the king of Shu to send the saltpeter to Chang'an to see if he dares. After all, Xiao Wangsun has also been an emperor for more than 30 years, and he is used to such small tricks in the court. Concubine Zhen nodded. Like Xiao Wangsun, she still didn't know the importance of this gunpowder to Xiaoming, and only regarded it as the same as coal and iron. With a sigh, Xiao Wangsun got up from the bed and continued, there are 20 fire torches in this equipment department, and this time I will send them together. Your Majesty, where are you going now? Concubine Zhen asked worriedly. When Xiao Wangsun got up, the matter of King Qi cannot be delayed. Besides, these ministers have to be dealt with. Xiao Wangsun put on his clothes and walked out. At this time, the minister who was kneeling outside the Chang'an hall saw Xiao Wangsun come out. At this time, the minister cried out, I hope the emperor thinks twice. This time the barbarian messenger comes here as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I hope your Majesty will think for the sake of the world. Since this is the case, whoever of you has a daughter will be sent to the palace. I am willing to accept him as a righteous daughter, and the matter of marriage will depend on your loving minister. Xiao Wangsun's complexion was calm. He was able to win the throne not only because of the support of King Zhao, but also because of his very smart mind. If it was before, he might have agreed to the barbarian's request in exchange for more than 10 years of stability, but since the last time in the court, he saw that these different surnamed vassal kings had ulterior motives, and he came back to it later. Because of this, the land of the royal family became less and less, and the vassal kings with different surnames demanded money and food in the name of resisting the barbarians. In this way, the royal family became weaker and the vassal kings with different surnames became stronger. Decades later, the Great Yu Kingdom will probably change its surname, so this time he simply pushed the matter out. The ministers looked at each other in dismay after hearing the words, you see me, I see you. It has nothing to do with them when the emperor's daughter is sent out, but it is different when their own daughter is sent out who doesn't know the brutality of this barbarian. Can you survive if you send it? No one answered for a while, and then Xiao Wangsun said, as for the treasury, you must be very clear, the annual tribute has already made the treasury stretched. So why not think about which vassal king to borrow some money for this year's tribute? This remark once again caught the ministers by surprise. Looking at these ministers who hesitated when it comes to their own interests, Xiao Wangsun snorted coldly, flung his sleeves and left, leaving a sentence, this matter does not need to be discussed again, just follow what was said in the court last time. King Wei can't keep Kang Zhao, and I also recognize it. This is the incompetence of the royal family. If it can be held, whoever talks about peace, I will cut off his head. Xiao Wangsun left. When the ministers stood up, the crowd asked the leading minister, Master Kui, how can this be good? What's the matter? Do you want to send your daughter out? This Master Kui was exactly Kui Hao. Of course I don't want to. The minister shrank his neck. If that's the case, let's wait for Kang Zhao city to break down. Our emperor never sees the coffin without crying. Kui Hao sneered and left with a humming tune. Seeing this, the other ministers dispersed, Knowing that it would be useless to kneel, King Zhao newspapers have published the news of the purchase of saltpeter for more than 20 days. The purchase of real gold and silver by the government has made the people no longer hesitate. Although the fleet from Chang'an also shipped a lot of saltpeter, Zhao Ming did not stop buying saltpeter because of the information that came with the fleet. He had to prepare gunpowder with all his strength 3 months. So now we only have more than 2 months left. Pang Yukin said in the governor's mansion before the fleet arrived. Zhao Ming received a reply from Zhao Wengxuan. In the letter, Zhao Wengxuan stated the actions of the barbarian messenger in Chang'an. The angry words in the letter showed that Zhao Wengxuan was very angry this time. However, the time for the barbarian attack has basically been determined, and it seems that it is only more than 2 months now. Looking at the 20 torches that were sent to the ground at the same time, Zhao Ming said, "Yes, so now you have to prepare. If I remember correctly, the wheat outside the city can be harvested in 3 days. Notify the prefectures to prepare to purchase and reserve grain, and organize the people to deliver supplies to Kangzhou City." Pang Yukin nodded. "Let's leave these matters to the next official. It will not delay the important affairs of His Highness." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 The Wheat is Ripe. 20 torches were lined up one by one on the ground. After instructing Pang Yukin about the logistics, Zhao Ming looked at these yellow-orange torches. The structure of these torches was different from that of artillery. These torches were narrow at both ends and thick in the middle. They were basically primitive torches, and the caliber is small compared to his artillery, not to mention the range. This time Zhao Wengxuan was humiliated by the barbarians, but he was so angry that he was willing to give him the torches this time. These torches were all made of brass. In Zhao Ming's eyes, these torches were clearly copper coins. It's no wonder that many emperors couldn't help but want to use this brass cannon to make money. His Royal Highness, what should I do with this torch? Would you like to send it to Kangzhou City together? Pang Yukin asked. Zhao Ming said with a smile, "No need, 20 cannons should be enough to make a brass cannon, so let's go directly to the equipment department." "Yes, Your Highness." Pang Yukin said he never likes to talk too much about things he doesn't know. Zhao Ming was quite satisfied with Zhao Wengxuan's reaction this time. He originally thought that the program would be Zhao Wengxuan writing a letter to scold Shu King, and then Shu King shied away with a bunch of excuses, and Zhao Wengxuan sent him another letter to ask him to wait. What surprised him was that Zhao Wengxuan handled it very well this time. He first solved his urgent needs, and then went to clean up the king of Shu. It can be seen that people are in a hurry and can always do something. This time, he also wants to thank the barbarian messenger for humiliating this cheap father. After checking the supplies delivered this time at the governor mansion, Zhao Ming and Pang Yukin went outside the city. Now the artillery and gunpowder matters can only be counted on Chen Qi and Lu Tong to produce at full capacity, and it is useless for him to worry about it. On the contrary, it is not only the fields of the common people who have to harvest wheat, but also the crops of his officials. He had promised Lu Fei that the harvest of these official villages would belong to the Kingzhou army, and it was time for him to fulfill his promise. On the banks of the Zhaoqing River, Zhao Ming and Pang Yukin stopped to look opposite the official fields of the Kingzhou army. At this time, the golden wheat was endless, and gusts of wind blew past, rolling up the layers of wheat waves. Looking at the crops in this field, Zhao Ming was even happier than seeing the successful casting of the first cannon. The people take food as their heaven, and agriculture is the foundation of the country. With food, the people will settle down, and the soldiers of the army will fight with peace of mind because the harvest was about to be harvested. Lu Fei specially arranged for the soldiers of the Kingzhou army to patrol the official fields to prevent the people from stealing the wheat. Most of the people are quiet, but there will always be people who are lazy and get something for nothing. 3 days ago, a small piece of wheat had been cut in a corner of the official village at night, which made Lu Fei furious in his heart. This official village is more important than his life. This is because he and the soldiers lead the oxen to farm wheat with a hoe, and watch them mature one day by day. Immediately, he sent soldiers to guard it day and night, and went to the government office in person to ask the arrest to investigate the matter. The government office knew the seriousness of the matter, and within 2 days, the man who stole the wheat was caught, and when Lu Fei went, he was beaten. But despite this kind of thing happened from time to time in the fields of this people. His Royal Highness, after this harvest, the people's life should be better. Pang Yukin stroked his beard and smiled. His eyes were dyed golden yellow from wheat. Xiaoming is engaged in the workshop area outside the city. At present, the most important benefit is the merchants, and the people do not get much benefit after all. This workshop area is only an extremely small business area, and it cannot drive the entire Qingzhou city, let alone the other 5 states yet. The 3-year tax reduction and exemption, the government does not take a cent for this harvest, and the people should have surplus food in their homes. Xiaoming also smiled. Once the people have surplus grain in their hands, they will sell part of it for money. Only when there is spare money in the family will be able to spend it. As a result, the 6 states' economies will slowly revitalize. It's just that the temple has to work hard to do business and enrich the treasury. Pang Yukin sighed. During this period of time, everything Xiaoming did was seen in his eyes. For a vassal king who could think of the people so much, I am afraid that the great Yu kingdom would not be able to find a second one. The longer he got along with Xiaoming, the more he felt that Xiaoming seemed to have a thought that even he could not understand. He did not know where this strange thought came from among them. I don't want to die tragically here. Xiaoming sighed in his heart. He never wanted to enjoy the pleasure of being a vassal king and live a luxurious life just like farming. If you want to harvest food, you have to work hard, which is why he farms and engages in industry. After all, when he came to such a place, he had nothing but technological advantages, and he did not have a family of a vassal king like other princes, and he's not good at conspiracy and tricks. After all, he grew up in modern times and was taught that the world is full of love. Therefore, his goal has always been very clear: to win the hearts of the people, to climb technology, and to engage in business. The two were talking when the sound of horses' hooves came from afar, and after a while, the ox rushed to the front. Lu Fei and Lu Ozin followed behind him, and the 3 looked relaxed. His Royal Highness, it's a coincidence that you are here too. Niu Ben laughed and got off his horse. Lu Fei said directly, the governor insisted on seeing the Qingzhou army's own manor, and the last general brought him here. Pang Changshi and I are also talking about this manor. You Qingzhou army can't be careless about the wheat harvest. When the time comes, hurry up and grab the harvest, so as not to rain and let the wheat rot on the ground. Xiaoming said, yes, Your Highness, this time the governor is here to harvest wheat. Lu Fei said. At this time, Niu Ben said, His Royal Highness can give out his property to the Qingzhou army, which is really something a very person can do. This old man admires. It's also a helpless move for the old general to win the award. Qingzhou is embarrassed. This is also because the Qingzhou army will not be short of food and clothing. And the training of the Qingzhou army will not be delayed by the slack farming and the busy farming. Niu Ben nodded. He could understand Xiaoming's thoughts. It was normal for the army to travel to and from the frontier. While talking, the group walked across the stone bridge to the wheat field. When he arrived in the field, Niu Ben skillfully pinched a wheat ear and rubbed it, then bit the wheat kernel in his mouth and said, well, the wheat is still a little damp, and it will be harvested after 2 days of drying. It should be enough to draw out 1,000 people at that time. Xiaoming's farmland is 100 hectares, that is, 10,000 mu of land. Today, the Great Yu Kingdom can basically receive about 3 stone of grain per mu of land in addition to other local officials and villages. This time, if there is no accident, 300,000 shi of grain is enough. After all, the Qingzhou army now has only 20,000 people, and these 300,000 grains are enough to feed 20,000 people for more than a year. And this year, another season can be harvested, and there are arable land reclaimed by the army in other places. In this way, the army's food problem is solved. Chapter 164 Barbarian Tricks. The fragrance of wheat mixed with the earth came in bursts, and the clear water rippled with blue waves. The natural and beautiful scenery makes everyone standing in the ridge relaxed and happy. If there is no threat from the barbarians, this is a quiet picture of the field. The 5 people talked about the trivial details of the harvest, and at this time Xiaoming told Niu Ben and the 3 of them that the barbarian envoys had entered Chang'an more than 2 months. Niu Ben frowned. Seeing Niu Ben's demeanor, Xiaoming asked, Old General, is there anything wrong with this? Niu Ben said, His Royal Highness, the totem of this barbarian is a steppe wolf, and this is also the cunning of the wolf pack. Don't believe this barbarian's 3-month attack on the city. That's right, Your Highness, judging from the situation I've played against the barbarians, this is indeed the case. The barbarians have never been trustworthy, are cunning, and are unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. Pang Yukin and Xiaoming looked at each other, their faces darkened. They didn't have much dealings with the barbarians, and none of them understood the characteristics of the barbarians. Also asked the old general to elaborate. Xiaoming asked sternly. Niu Ben said, the barbarians said that they would attack the city for 3 months. It seems that the last commander must have let His Highness take no precautions, so we could be caught off guard. From now on, His Highness should send scouts to inquire about the grasslands at any time news, to prevent the barbarians from suddenly attacking Kangzhou exactly, and before the barbarian army attack the city, it will inevitably send a small tribe on the grassland to conduct a tentative attack in order to investigate the defense of the city. Lu Fei also looked solemn. Luo Xin wanted to say something, but found that they had all said it, so he stopped talking. Xiaoming nodded. The information the two of them said was very important to Xiaoming. If the barbarians really had a tentative attack, then the artillery must not be exposed in advance this time, but could be used until the main force of the barbarians arrived. In this case, the old general is also invited to go to Kangzhou to supervise the battle, and only some soldiers are left to harvest wheat. Niu Ben nodded. Your Highness, rest assured, with me Niu Ben, Kangzhou city is as solid as a rock. After agreeing on this matter, Niu Ben and the three left first, and they needed to lead the Kangzhou army to Kangzhou city immediately to avoid accidents. Xiaoming and Pang Yukin continued to ride their horses to see other officials. Niu Ben was responsible for the marching and fighting, and what they had to do was to ensure the logistics of Kangzhou city. At noon, the two basically looked at all the official fields, and Pang Yukin went back to the governor's mansion. Niu Ben's words completely put Kangzhou into a state of combat readiness ahead of time. Pang Yukin needs to be responsible for transporting various materials to Kangzhou city, so as not to be in a hurry. Xiaoming went to the equipment department in the afternoon and asked Chen Qi to hand over the 10 artillery pieces produced to Pang Yukin and transport them to Kangzhou city together. The remaining one piece of artillery was reserved for training purposes. Said, his plan was completely disrupted. It's really not a plan to keep up with the changes. Your Highness, are these 10 enough? Chen Qi looked worriedly at the slave who was about to transport the artillery away. It's not enough, there's no other way. I just hope that the barbarian army can come later. Xiaoming frowned. By the way, how about the powder cans you made? Mentioning this strange look on Chen Qi's face, he said, Your Highness, I understand that there are rusty iron nails in this powder jar, but what is it for? You don't understand this. You just need to do it. Now you can immediately recruit extra people to fill the gunpowder cans. This can also make up for the lack of artillery numbers. Xiaoming said. Chen Qi nodded gloomily. The matter of the powder jar really surprised him enough. After talking about the powder can, Xiaoming asked again, how is the catapult? There are already 30 of these. I asked Zhang Liang to borrow a lot of carpenters. This is a simple catapult, and it is very fast. Chen Qi pointed to the yard next door. Now they are assembling the catapult there. This time, the catapult made by Xiaoming had the equipment division only have a range of 200 meters, and the catapult was very small, so it could be easily transported to the city wall. Now no one knows when the barbarians will come. He can only speed up the production of this powder pot, and use quantity to make up for quality. In the yard next door, hundreds of carpenters were beating. This is a catapult similar to bow and arrow structure. A pole-like bamboo is bent in front, with twine on both sides, and a spoon-like thing in the middle is used to put the gunpowder can when firing. You only need to hold the handle of the spoon, just like the bow and arrow, and when you let go, the gunpowder can in the spoon can be shot out. But even so, this requires 3 soldiers to operate at the same time. This kind of catapult was found by Xiaoming from the technology library. The structure is the simplest. In order to cope with the immediate crisis, he had to rely on this kind of catapult with a high production speed. Let Zhang Liang dispatch some craftsmen to come over. Kangzhou city needs at least 50 units, and Kangzhou city will need them in the past few days. Xiaoming said. From Xiaoming's ecology and urgent tone, Chen Qi realized something, and he asked, Your Highness, are the barbarians here? I'm afraid this is the case. From now on, the city defense must be properly prepared. Xiaoming said. Chen Qi nodded. Realizing the seriousness of the problem, he said, Your Highness, the 4th iron mold will be formed soon, and the equipment department will be able to make 16 artillery pieces by the end of next month. A total of 26 artillery pieces. I hope they can handle it enough. Xiaoming smiled bitterly in the tone of a bull run. In 3 months of the barbarian, it is not bad to be able to get 2. However, the soldiers were bewildered. If the barbarians were in good order, the army of the Great Yu Kingdom would not be beaten and unable to fight back. Chen Qi scratched his head. This is his fastest speed. Remembering something, he suddenly said, By the way, Your Highness, the glass you have made for the glass workshop is correct. Here I am. Really? Then give it to me. Nobin will go to Kangzhou tomorrow. Before that, this thing must be brought to him for investigation. Xiao Ming said. Chen Qi turned around and walked out. After a while, he came over with a box in his hand. Xiao Ming opened it, and there were 3 pairs of circular glass inside. The glass was thick in the middle and thin on both sides. It was a modern magnifying glass, and the other half was a concave lens with a concave center. Let Chen Qi prepare these for the purpose of assembling the telescope. But this telescope is not enough for 2 magnifying glasses, because if there is no prism, the image will be upside down. So Xiao Ming used the magnifying glass and a concave lens to assemble the telescope, so that the image he saw would be positive. However, the field of view will be relatively narrow, and the multiple will be smaller for the current situation. Xiao Ming pursues simplicity in everything, and a monocular is enough. Chapter 165. The lonely moon hangs high, and the silver light covers the ground like the hoarfrost in the morning. In the woods, dozens of figures swayed, leaving behind black figures. Brother, what should I do? Now this official village is in the hands of the King Zhao army day and night, and there is no chance to attack it at all. A voice that could be lowered said. This is a small forest opposite Xiaoking Guanzhong. Through the gaps between the trees, you can clearly see the reflection of the soldier's silver armor. Yet, this wheat will be harvested soon, and if you miss it, it will be too late. A man known as the eldest brother was wrapped in black clothes, and the silver full moon reflected in his eyes. He said, Beishantaiji will soon attack Kang Zhao. The merchants on the grassland have brought news. Let us do our best. The way to cut off the food for King Qi's army. We will burn the wheat tonight no matter what. That's right, I couldn't help it for a long time. When was Xiao Ming's turn to speak in King Zhao City before? Since he forced us into a dead end, we'll let him die first, said one person. Exactly. This time, the grassland merchants brought news. Beishantaiji said that if we do this well, after the King Zhao is conquered, they will distribute the land of these 6 states to us, then we are also one. A little prince. These words made the people in the forest even more excited, and the man in black said, so this time we must give Beishantaiji a gift. What should I do, eldest brother? Someone said. The black man pondered for a while, and said, the King Zhao army is so strictly guarded, we may not succeed in rushing forward. In this way, you lead 10 people from the east to attract the attention of the King Zhao army, but don't fight them, but put them diverted away, and we took the opportunity to go up a fire and burn the wheat. Brother really has a good plan. You come with me. Another man in black said something, and led 10 people across the stone bridge to grope for Guanzhong. When they got close, one of them took out the firebook and blew a sharp breath. The firebook burst into flames, and the man threw the firebook into the wheat field. Because it was a good day during this time, the wheat field was very dry, and when it touched sparks, the wheat field suddenly burned. At this time, the King Zhao army noticed the 10 men in black who were illuminated by the flames, and shouted, someone burned the wheat field, assassin, assassin. This sound came out, and the guarding King Zhao army was shocked. Seeing that the wheat field was on fire, they immediately carried buckets to put out the fire, otherwise the whole Guanzhong would be destroyed. Another part of the King Zhao army immediately rushed towards the man in black. The man in black did not love to fight, but kept a distance from the chasing soldiers. The rest of the men in black hiding in the woods took advantage of the chaos to cross the Zhaoqing River and sneak into dozens of corners of Guanzhong. When they arrived at the location, they all blew the fire, and the flames instantly filled the Guanzhong. The King Zhao army guarding Guanzhong was shocked. The fire on this side had not been extinguished, and the fire on the other side had started again. They had to spread out and keep fighting, and this was the trick of the man in black. They gathered together at this time, showing their short swords and rushing towards the scattered King Zhao soldiers. A sound of metal piercing through the armor came, and Zhu Sansi felt a sharp pain in his back. The training on weekdays made him realize something immediately. Instead of turning around, he rolled on the spot and pulled out his waist knife. Because of the resistance of the plate armor, the man in black's dagger did not penetrate too deep, and enduring the severe pain, Zhu Sansi stared at the man in black in front of him. It has been more than 2 months since he entered the King Zhao army, and in another month, his recruit training will end, and the soldiers guarding the cornfields this time are the best in this training. He stared calmly at the man in black while shouting, the assassin is here? The man in black who attacked looked at the King Zhao army soldier in front of him with a bit of astonishment. This blow did not kill the soldier. However, the shouts of the soldiers attracted the attention of other soldiers. At this time, the soldiers who were supposed to put out the fire rushed here. The man in black glanced at the soldier, turned around and was about to run away, hiding in the dark again and trying to find an opportunity to assassinate him again. It's just that Zhu Sansi didn't give the man in black this chance. He bounced up like a cheetah and slashed down at the black man who stabbed him. The man in black had to dodge the knife. He didn't have such thick armor. Zhu Sansi's slashing move was nothing but a false move. Halfway through the knife, he suddenly slashed sideways at the man in black. The man in black couldn't dodge in time, his arm was slashed, and he screamed suddenly, "Big brother!" The other men in black immediately surrounded him, and Zhu Sansi immediately placed the knife in front of him for defense. The man in black was injured, and seeing the other soldiers getting closer and closer, he hesitated and shouted. Suddenly the other men in black understood, no longer fighting, and sank into the darkness one after another. At this time, other soldiers rushed over and asked, "Zhu Sansi, how are you?" The stinging pain in the back of the ninja. Zhu Sansi lifted a bucket of water and said, "I'm fine, hurry up and put out the fire." Although these soldiers wished they could eat the flesh of these men in black, they knew better that if all the wheat was burnt, the entire King Zhao army would lose their food and grass for a year. So even though these men in black may be waiting for an opportunity nearby, they still carry water to put out fires regardless of the danger. At this time, the soldiers who went to the King Zhao camp to rescue had already set off, and they only hoped that others would come quickly because the flames of this wheat field burned more and more vigorously, and the water could not be extinguished at all in the woods opposite. The man in black looked at the burning flames and let out a smug laugh. There were other official villages below, but he wanted to see how these soldiers could save them. The red flames are getting higher and higher, the smoke is filled, the sparks are flying, and gradually the sky seems to be burning red, and this strange color was quickly discovered by the people of King Zhao and King Qi's mansion. Xiao Ming was pulled up from the bed by Lu Luo. When he saw the red sky in the north of the city, his expression changed greatly. That was the location of Guanzhong. He grew up in the countryside since he was a child, and he is very aware of the color of the sky. There is only one situation, that is, the large-scale burning of wheat straw. But in this time, the people will not burn the straw, because every household counts on the straw to burn the fire for cooking. The only explanation is that the wheat is burned. Prepare the horse. Xiao Ming was shocked. Aster said, "Your Highness, the horse is ready." When Xiao Ming heard the words, he immediately took the guards of the palace and galloped away from the city. At this time, the King Zhao army also learned the news that the Guanzhong was burned, and the soldiers in the barracks came out at the same time. People in nearby villages were also affected. Because they were afraid that their rice would be stolen, every family would send someone to live by the field to watch their wheat fields. When the farming was busy, the official residence of King Qi is on fire. A commoner shouted, "Everyone, go and put out the fire." When the people in front of the fields heard the words, they picked up their sickles and ran to Guanzhong. Chapter 166 Loss. The dark night was red with flames, and the smell of thick smoke was pungent in front of Guanzhong's farmland. The scorched smell of wheat made Xiao Ming's heart like a knife. "This is the food of the King Zhao army for several months of food, Your Highness." With a loud shout, a rush of hoods came. Niu ran, and Lu Fei came with the King Zhao army, killing thousands of knives. "Who did this?" Lu Fei shouted frantically, rushing into the wheat field angrily, and kept stepping on the burning wheat. Niu Ben's face was sinking like water. Seeing Xiao Ming's expression of extreme sadness, he said, "Your Highness, now is not the time to be sad. Think of a way to stop the flames from spreading, otherwise the wheat will be burnt out, and it will spread to the cornfields of the people nearby." Xiao Ming had just arrived. He recovered from his anger and said, "Let all the soldiers stop using water to fight the fire," and everyone immediately cut the wheat along the edge of the burning wheat to build a firebreak. Niu Ben had no time to think about what a fire belt was at this time, and he ordered, "Everyone go and cut the wheat." At this time, Xiao Ming saw many people who were disturbed. He walked over and said, "Everyone, please help this king to control the flames." A man said, "Your Highness, we are bound to do this." After speaking, many people immediately rushed into the wheat field, bowed their bodies and cut the wheat skillfully. Another shouted, "I'm going to the village now to find help." This time, the King Zhao army cavalry came here. There were only a few thousand people. The infantry was still behind. If they arrived, they would lose even more. On the contrary, there were many villages nearby. Niu Ben said, "Get on the horse, I'll take you there in order to save the wheat in Guanzhong." Xiao Ming was not idle and entered the wheat field with a knife. Not long after, a rush of footsteps sounded, and people from neighboring villages rushed to the scene, and they immediately rushed into the sea of fire. There were so many people who were proficient in harvesting, and the burning area of several hundred meters was quickly surrounded. After another half an hour, the King Zhao army infantry arrived and joined the ranks of harvesting wheat until the early morning. The flame was finally extinguished by the separation belt. The giant smoke made the red sun in the morning looming, and Xiao Ming's body was filled with a pungent smoky smell of burning straw. His Royal Highness, The 500 acres of land are finished. Lu Fei's face was black and white, which was smoked, as were other soldiers and commoners. The flame was finally extinguished, and they breathed a sigh of relief. 500 acres. Xiao Ming repeated, 500 acres, 1,500 stone of grain. But the problem now is not the problem of food, but, who is so bold, and now insane, so disregarding the impending siege of the barbarians and destroying the logistics of Kangzhou for him? This is betrayal. This is treason. This is a traitor. If such a person does not kill, it is not enough for the people to be angry. Where were the soldiers guarding the official village last night? Xiao Ming asked coldly. Lu Fei felt a chill all over his body, and he felt a strong killing intent from Xiao Ming, which was very different from the easygoing Xiao Ming in peacetime. His Royal Highness wants to punish the crime, just punish the crime of the last general. It is because the last general is negligent that the thieves will burn the wheat. Lu Fei knelt down on one knee and pleaded guilty. His Royal Highness, this has nothing to do with the captain. It's because we fell for the treachery of the thieves. At this time, a dozen soldiers knelt down. Immediately you all get up. This king didn't say anything about your sins. Xiao Ming said, I just want to know what happened. The scale of the Guanzhong is very large, and the soldiers can only patrol in a scattered manner. We were training last night when suddenly a group of men in black touched the wheat and set it on fire. We found that we chased after him immediately. We never thought that another group of men in black was ambushing. The man in black wanted to take advantage of the chaos to kill, but Zhu Sansi was stabbed in the back, but he said that the man in black also let him cut his arm, said a soldier. At this time, Xiao Ming noticed a soldier kneeling on the ground. His back was red. He sighed in his heart. How could he blame the soldier who was injured and still robbed all night? It was his own fault. So careless before the battle, he said, you're Zhu Sansi. Since you're injured and haven't gone to the medical officer for treatment, don't you want your life? Xiao Lu said that this wheat is the life of the Kingzhou army. Zhu Sansi said dumbly. Xiao Ming was suffocated. With such a soldier, why would the Kingzhou army not become the first heroic division? He said, he just likes to fart. Go to the medical officer, the wheat will burn when it burns. This king doesn't want to lose a good one. Soldier Zhu Sansi's eyes were warm for a while, and King Qi's words of concern moved him. Lu Fei laughed awkwardly, and said to Zhu Sansi, what are you still doing? You haven't gone to the doctor yet. Zhu Sansi responded and walked out with the help of a few soldiers. Pang Yukin also rushed over last night, and he said, Your Highness, Zhu Sansi said that someone was cut and wounded. Now we should immediately search for anyone with an injured arm to capture this traitor, otherwise these people will continue to make trouble. Xiao Ming nodded, and he said to Niu Ben, Old General, this wheat can't wait any longer. Let the soldiers collect the wheat today. It's better than drying it when it's not enough. As soon as his words fell, a commoner dressed up and said, Your Highness, since you want to harvest wheat, let us help too. Your Highness has done so many things for the common people, and now it is time for us to help Your Highness. Yes, we can't let the Kingzhou army's food run out. It doesn't matter how late our wheat is harvested. A few days later, the people said in a loud voice. Xiao Ming was moved in his heart. These people just responded to Niu Ben's words, You treat me with a countryman, and I will repay it with a countryman. He was moved, and clasped his fists and said, Thank you all, thank you very much. Pang Yukin has a smile on his lips. Whoever wins the hearts and minds of the people wins the world, and now the people repay virtue with virtue, proving that the decrees these days are not in vain. Niu Ben took a deep look at Xiao Ming, and shouted to the soldiers of the Kingzhou army, What are you waiting for? The people have already cut rice, we can't cut less than them. Yes. The roar of unison came, and the soldiers went down to the fields to harvest. Seeing such a scene, Xiao Ming felt relieved. For the sake of these lovely soldiers and these lovely people, even if his body was torn to pieces, he would still defend Kangzhou City, and no longer let the barbarians step into the fiefdom, and no longer let the people suffer from foreign violence. Momo and Pang Yukin returned to the city. Xiao Ming ordered Kingzhou City and the nearby counties to immediately search for those who suffered stab wounds on the arm, and those who reported relevant clues were rewarded with 1,000 taels of silver. At the same time, he urgently summoned Li San to the palace of King Qi. Chapter 167 Trap. Li San, I order you to send someone to watch all the hospitals immediately. Anyone who buys medicinal materials for bruises and injuries can't be spared in King Qi's mansion, Xiao Ming said solemnly to Li San. Li San had already learned the news that Guanzhong had been burned on the way back. Now Wang Zhuan is in Kangzhou City, responsible for collecting intelligence on the grassland, and he is responsible for matters on the fief. This incident made him feel guilty because he had not received any news before when Xiaoguan came, He had already arranged for someone to investigate this matter secretly. Li San hesitated and continued, "By the way, Your Highness, these days Xiaoguan has asked the secret guard to keep an eye on the merchants who came back from the grassland, but he found a few. This businessman is suspicious, and after entering Qingzhou City, these people searched for news everywhere, and they also wandered around the workshop area and the equipment department." "You mean these businessmen are spies on the grassland?" Xiao Ming said. "Isn't it right? These smugglers are only profit-seeking. They can use our money to do things, and they can also use the barbarians' money to do things." Li Sam said. "Take our money to do business?" Xiao Ming frowned. "Does the secret guard also buy news on the grasslands from them?" Li San nodded. "On the vast grasslands, only these merchants can penetrate into the barbarian tribe. During this time, the barbarians are very vigilant against unfamiliar caravans. Therefore, we can only obtain some information by bribing these businessmen. In reality, there are no double agents." Li San didn't believe that these businessmen were right. Xiao Ming said, "Since that's the case, you should secretly arrest these suspicious businessmen and torture them. We don't have much time to communicate with each other. They've gone in circles, and at this point they'd rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go." Li San nodded, his expression suddenly gloomy. Li San had just left, and Xiao Ming was about to go out, when Li Keihun suddenly asked to see him outside the palace. During this time, he was busy preparing for the war in Qingzhou. He didn't care too much about the business of the Chamber of Commerce, but handed it over to Li Keihun. "His Royal Highness." Li Keihun bowed in the main hall and said, "No gift? You, the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, are so busy, how come you have time to come to me?" Xiao Ming asked. Li Keihun said with a smile on his face, "His Royal Highness, no matter how busy I am, I can't forget you, Your Highness." Your Highness, I have a good thing to tell you this time." "What's the matter?" Xiao Ming lacked interest, and the succession of things made him a little irritable. Li Keihun saw that Xiao Ming's mood was not high, and said, "Your Highness, you must be happy to hear this. I sent 2 ships of saltpeter to His Highness." "2 ships of saltpeter? Did Chen Wenlong say that there is no saltpeter on the market now?" Xiao Ming wondered. Li Keihun said, "Your Highness will thank Qin Yuanwei. A few days ago, when I came back from Jinling City, I was encountering the Qin family's merchant ship that was returning to Qingzhou together. The lack of saltpeter, I remembered this and went to Qin Yuanwei. Qin Yuanwei was very happy, saying that the saltpeter was going to be delivered to His Royal Highness." "Oh?" Xiao Ming not only was not happy after hearing this, but frowned. "Your Highness, what's wrong? Isn't this a good thing?" Li Keihun asked. "A good thing? It is indeed a good thing. It's just that Qin Chuanayan didn't come to take credit for this good thing, so why did he give it to you humbly?" Xiao Ming said. Li Keihun was stunned for a moment, and suddenly recalled, "Yes, this kid was more diligent than me before." "Your Highness, what do you mean?" Xiao Ming didn't answer, but asked, "Where were you when you saw Qin Chuanayan?" "He is on the dock and seems to be going out of town." Li Keihun said. Xiao Ming rolled his eyes. The connection between these two things made Qin Chuanayan feel more and more wrong. "Hurry up and call Li San back," Xiao Ming said in a hurry. Seeing Xiao Ming's embarrassed expression, Li Keihun didn't dare to ask any more, and ran out immediately, and after a while, Li San was chased back. Xiao Ming and Li San talked about the whole story, and immediately took the secret guard to the Tuojiang wharf. Just arrived at the wharf, there is still the shadow of Qin Chuanayan. At this time the guards in the city soon came to report that, except for some servants and Qin Chuanayan's concubine, all the important members of the family were not in the city. "Qin Chuanayan, this king is not mean to you," Xiao Ming said angrily. Li Sam said cautiously, "His Royal Highness, Qin Yuanwei is always a noble family, but I didn't expect him to be so forbearing. He not only deceived His Highness, but also let me relax my vigilance against him. The lower official is guilty. It's not your fault, it's the king's fault. The wealthy family is always the wealthy family. How could they be willing to become commoners?" Xiao Ming muttered to himself. Li Keihun said at this time, "His Royal Highness, there is no conclusion at this time. Maybe Qin Yuan is just going out with his family. Look, aren't all the Qin family's merchant ships here? These 2 ships are loaded with saltpeter." The 3 of them were talking when an old man suddenly came out from the bow of the boat, and when they saw Li Keihun, the thin old man said, "Manager Li, Member Qin and his family went back to save relatives, and before leaving, he specially ordered the old slave to hand over the things on this ship to His Highness to relieve His Highness' urgent need." "His Royal Highness, look, maybe this is just your guess." Li Keihun said. On the dock were 2 merchant ships with a length of more than 30 meters. These were the standard water transport merchant ships of the Qin family. If the warehouses were full of saltpeter, this would really make King Zhao no longer have to worry about the source of the gunpowder. Frowning, Xiaoming and Li San got on the boat together. At this time, he couldn't help but wonder if he was too sensitive after all. It cannot be concluded that this is what Qin Chuanyun did just by guessing. Your Highness, this saltpeter is here. The old man led Xiaoming to the cabin, and sure enough, it was full of saltpeter. Li Kaidan said, "Look, Your Highness, maybe Qin Yuan really did a good thing at this time." The old man said, "These saltpeter were bought from a merchant in Shu at a high price. I heard that the nitrate cave in Shu was sealed by the king of Shu. Only with the order of the king of Shu can we continue to mine it." When he was speaking, the old man raised his hand and rubbed his eyes, because he was standing very close to the old man, and a faint smell from the old man's hand floated into his nose. Xiaoming was instantly shocked, and he shouted, "Gunpowder! Get out of here!" Li San was startled. He raised the knife and fell. The old man clutched his chest and fell down with a groan. The three quickly fled out, and before they walked 20 meters, a deafening bang sound came, and Xiaoming pressed Li San and Li Kaidan to the ground quickly. At this moment, a wave of air swept across the three of them in an instant. Li Kaidan, "You bastard, I'm going to kill you." As if his body was broken, Li San got up from the ground, stretched out his hand and punched Li Kaidan, who was blinded. Chapter 168 Militia Act. A sound of ghost crying and wolf howling sounded in his ears, and the memory of the experimental explosion was recalled again. This is a similar experience. When he stood up and touched his whole body, Xiaoming felt as if he had not died for a while. In front of him, Li San was riding on Li Kaidan, punching Li Kaidan in the face with punch after punch. The pier was in a mess at this time. The Qin family's merchant ship sank slowly in the flames, and the violent explosion also affected the nearby ships. From time to time there was a sound of wailing from the boat. "Qin Chuanyun, barbarians, you have successfully angered this king." Xiaoming's eyes were empty, and his faint voice seemed to come from the abyss. He kicked Li San on the body. "Stop fighting. Is this time for infighting? I don't care what method you use, you will bring Qin Chuanyun back to me, and I will hang him in Kangzhou City on the gate of the city." Li San stood up at this time. If it weren't for the few sentences Li Kaidan defended the Qin family, they would not have entered the boat. Fortunately, Xiaoming was very familiar with the smell of gunpowder this time. If other vassal kings were not down to earth, all three of them would have died on the boat this time. "His Royal Highness, I'll go now. If you can't catch Qin Chuanyun, you will take my Li San's head and feed it to the dog." Li San was almost blown away, which made Xiaoming trust him in the future. He said no more, and went to the city with the secret guard. Li Kaidan was beaten into a pig's head by Li San. He crawled over from the ground and hugged Xiaoming's leg, crying, "Dianha, His Royal Highness, I really knew that Qin Chuanyun would be so sinister." "Your Highness." Xiaoming looked at him coldly. He was really tired when he met such a pig teammate. He just kicked Li Kaidan's ass. "Don't blame this king for not believing you. Before you find out about it, I can only apologize that you have been in prison for a few days, not to mention Li San. This king cannot but doubt you." I have to say that this time it was Li Kaidan who introduced Xiaoming into the cabin step by step, which had to be reminiscent. Li Kaidan said, "His Royal Highness, I am wronged. I just want to make His Highness happy." Xiaoming was too lazy to pay attention to him, and the guards of the palace immediately stepped forward to take Li Kaidan away. Recalling the process just now, Xiaoming still had lingering fears. Among the two ships, the ship next door was blown to pieces, which shows that the gunpowder was actually put on and ignited by the adjacent one. Because of this, they couldn't detect it in time. If it wasn't for the powder of gunpowder on this old man's hands, he would really be dead. This time back to the city, Xiaoming went directly to the prison, and Li San had already arrested all the businessmen he suspected and tortured them severely. One of Li San's subordinates, who was in charge of extorting confessions by torture, was called Liu Zi. At this time he said, "His Royal Highness, I asked, these bastards really do not cry without seeing the coffin. They have to force me to use Ling Kai's methods. They brought news to the local nobles, and the barbarians gave them a lot of benefits. Let them tell the local aristocrats cut off His Highness's logistics and assassinated His Highness, whoever gets the most credit. And in the future when the barbarians come to dominate King Zhao, whoever gets the bigger fiefs." Liu Zi threw a knife on the ground, and the knife was still sticking to human flesh. This extreme criminal law was taught to Li San by Xiaoming this time. Li San seemed to hate it too. "How did Qin Chuanyun's gunpowder come from, did you ask?" Xiaoming's face flickered in the light of the torches in the cell. Sixth son said, "I asked, It's the gunpowder formula given by the barbarians. These bastards who eat inside and outside, don't worry about letting them die. It's still useful for this king to keep it. Xiao Ming said with a cold expression and left the cell. It is hard to guard against thieves now. Xiao Ming has finally suffered a big loss in this matter, but this is not what he hates the most. What he hates most is these people who betray the country and seek glory. These traitors and lackeys. They eat the grain of the great Yu state, drink the water of the great Yu state, and step on the land of the great Yu state, but for their own glory and wealth, they disregard the life and death of thousands of people and kill themselves. The compatriots and the country are only the dog food given by the aliens. He can tolerate anything, but only this one thing cannot be tolerated. The sound of the explosion at the wharf also alerted Niu Ben and the others, who rushed into King's House City with the cavalry at the governor mansion. They saw Xiao Ming in a state of embarrassment. Your Highness, what's going on? Lu Fei was shocked. Niu Ben rarely showed concern on the ground. His Royal Highness, Pang Yuken, already knew about the front and back, and he told the story of Qin Chuanyan's intention to murder Xiao Ming. This Li Keihun was a killer when he was in the King's Hao army. I'll kill him now. Lu Fei said angrily. Niu Ben said solemnly, don't cause trouble to His Highness anymore. What is needed at this time is unity, and don't do things that your loved ones hurt and your enemies happy. This only shows that Qin Chuanyan is very good at forbearance. This one step in a row, no one could have predicted it. Yeah, I first burned the official residence, and then used Li Keihun to announce the good news, which caused His Highness's suspicion. He knew that His Highness had high hopes for the Qin family, and he would definitely come to him in person, so he set a trap at the dock and waited for His Highness to take the bait. Luo Xin said. Xiao Ming gradually regained his composure at this time, and he said, you don't want to be the Queen General. Li San has already led someone to chase him out. Don't be idle anymore. You must arrest Qin Chuanyan. Niu Ben nodded, and the three of them clapped their fists and left. At this time, Pang Yuken said, His Royal Highness, the heart of the noble family will not die, and the rebellion is coming out. We can no longer react passively like this. We should kill them in advance. This king came to you naturally for this matter. Today, you have drawn up a decree to inform the people of the 6 states that the traitor will die. From today onwards, people who see suspicious behavior can be arrested first, and then interrogated by the government officials. If they are found to be barbarian spies, the participants will be rewarded heavily. At the same time, each village can organize its own militia to patrol the township to maintain law and order, and arrest the details. The militia? Pang Yuken's eyes lit up. This was another method he had never heard of before. Wonderful. In this way, each village will have its own self-defense force. Xiao Ming's side, he couldn't do it either. To deal with these traitors and seek glory, he had to mobilize the majority of the people to participate. Next, he told Pang Yuken about the specific operation method of the militia. In short, this militia belongs to the armed forces organized by the villages spontaneously. It defends against foreign enemies in wartime, and is responsible for maintaining law and order in peacetime and patrolling their respective defense areas. Actually, this is a way of defending against the enemy during the war, fully mobilizing the power of the people. In this way, it means that we have the help of 1 million people in the fief. Xiao Ming said. Pang Yuken nodded. Well, and this militia can also suppress the rebellion of the local nobles. It really does it all with one stone. Chapter 169 Captured. Father, I want to be a militiaman. Zhu Wuliu was holding a hoe in his hand with a look of excitement. You're a coward. Be a shitty militiaman, and I'll just let your father go to the house in a courtyard in Zhujia village. Zhu Wuliu was protesting to his father. Yesterday's newspaper conveyed that each village should organize a militia of 100 people to be responsible for patrolling, maintaining law and order, and arresting barbarians, and it is said that the militia will be allocated special clothes in the future. Why? I'm going to catch the fine work of the barbarians. These dare to harm our Highness King Qi. I want to smash his head with a hoe. Zhu Wuliu said. Why? Just because I'm your father, and because I'm the team leader. This team has to listen to me. Roll the ball. Zhu Dao glared at Zhu Wuliu at this time. Zhu Wuliu's mother came over and said, your father is right. When you get married and have a baby, your father and I don't care what you do. Going to the threshing floor to throw wheat. Zhu Wuliu squatted down with a look of decadence. Then you quickly marry me a wife. I'll give you a betrothal gift when some wheat is sold. Zhu Wuliu's mother said with a smile, and then he asked her husband, does the government really harvest wheat this year? How much is a stone? This is still fake. When the captain of the village went to the government office, the magistrate said that now the 6 prefectures and government offices buy grain, 50 cents a stone. So expensive. Zhu Shigren Zuda is also satisfied. His family has 50 acres of land, and the harvest of 150 shi is no problem. He leaves 20 shi, and the remaining 130 shi of grain is sold. This is more than 60 taels of silver. There is still another season this year, and a dozen taels of silver a year have not run away. Thinking of this, Zhu Daman will wake up with a smile. When did he have so much silver in his hand? However, the government office also said that if the number of purchases is enough, it will not be collected, so quickly hit the wheat. Zuda explained. After saying this, he walked out. Since the peasant community came out, the villagers are gradually not accepted by the villagers, and no one listens to what they say. On the contrary, the peasant community has gradually become a place where the village speaks, and a dozen or so captains of a village decide the affairs of the whole village. Now that the decree in the newspaper came, he had to go to the farm community with the other captains to discuss how to implement it. Many people in the village used to work for a long time for the wealthy clan, and now they have their own land. Seeing that they will have a good life in the future, they are even more grateful to His Royal Highness King Ki, so the decree in this newspaper has never been delayed. Now he's going to talk about the militia. Someone assassinated King Ki, which was a big deal for them. They were really afraid that if King Ki had an accident and changed to another vassal king in the future, their days would probably go back to the past. So after the reporter read the newspaper in the village, the people in the village were angry, and every household urged the farmer to organize the militia as soon as possible. Otherwise, the team captains of them will be replaced and the capable ones will come on. Thinking beautifully, I, Zuda, have the ability. While thinking, Zuda walked to the farm at the same time. The fiery militia decree quickly spread to the prefectures and counties outside Kingzhou like a spring breeze, and the militiamen of each village gradually appeared on the roads around the village. They maintain law and order in the village, interrogate suspicious passers-by, and wherever there are people, militiamen can be seen patrolling with a variety of farm implements. In a mountain forest in Yizhou, dozens of figures shuttled through the woods. They looked tired, their clothes were muddy, and their clothes were ripped off by the branches. Qin Juanian glanced at the wound on his arm, and he had not been treated for a long time, and the wound had festered, having planned a conspiracy against Xiaoming. He immediately took a boat and fled south along the Tuojiang River, trying to leave King Ki's fifth, but King Ki was faster than him, and soon there was an additional checkpoint along the pier along the Tuojiang River to strictly check the ships passing by. As a last resort, they could only abandon the boat and take the path, but it didn't take long for many people to patrol the country lanes. These people questioned the passing merchants, checked the arms of every passer-by, and had to burrow into the forest. After such a month, the rations they brought with them have been eaten completely, so people are very tired. Father, I can't walk anymore. Qin Mu suddenly sat down. He was originally a scholar, and his physical strength was not as good as that of Qin Juanian. Qin Juanian looked at the 70-year-old mother, married his wife, and his own brothers. All of them looked tired. For the first time, he felt regret, and a momentary impulse completely destroyed him. King Ki is not dead, and only he can use this strange method. We can't stop, we're caught, and none of us can run away. Qin Juanian roared, and the voice came from the woods, alarming the birds outside the woods. A shepherd boy was dozing off. Hearing the sound, he turned his eyes and ran away, shouting, "Dad, there are people in the woods." The man who was catching fish by the river heard it, and immediately made a clever call. The cow was no longer needed, and he ran to the village with a shepherd boy. He was going to inform the militia that a suspicious person had appeared here. Qin Juanian paled in shock. The shepherd boy was sleeping in the shade under the bushes, but he didn't notice it. Qin Mu also stood up from the ground in fright, and the others were even more panicked. Run into the woods. Qin Juanian roared. The others fell into the depths of the woods after hearing the words. After a while, hundreds of villagers appeared in the woods, and a leader asked the shepherd boy, "Are you sure that person has a wound on his arm and is wearing silk?" "That's right. Hurry up, or let other villages catch it, and the reward will be gone." The shepherd boy shouted. The militiamen nodded. Hundreds of people scattered and chased between the woods. These people were physically fit and often climbed mountains in the woods. Among them were hunters who were proficient in hunting, and soon Qin Juanian and his party were discovered by the militia. Hundreds of villagers sped up their steps to surround Qin Juanian. In Kingzhou City, Wang Zhuan returned from the grassland and brought an important news. At the same time, Huan Chuo has moved to Kingzhou City. Xiaoming asked. The last explosion only hurt him a little bit, but it doesn't matter. For the past month, he has been urging the equipment division in Lutong to organize the formation of the militia, harvest wheat, and conduct strict investigations. Now another batch of 16 artillery pieces has been completed and shipped to Kingzhou City. along with 50 catapults and 2,000 powder cans. This is already in full production. Wang Zhuan's face was dark. Obviously he had suffered a lot these days. He said, "This Huanchuo team is likely to try to attack Kangzhou City." Xiao Ming nodded. The barbarian attack was imminent. It was time to go to Kangzhou City. The two were talking when Pang Yukan suddenly walked in with a big laugh. He said, "Congratulations, Your Highness, that old thing Qin Chuanian was caught. The 4 changes are completed. Please recommend. Ask for a monthly pass." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Kangzhou City. Skynet is sloppy but not leaking. Qin Chuanian, you can't escape this king's position. After all, Xiao Ming's spirit was shocked. That was almost killed by this old fox, and he has always remembered this account. When Wang Zhuan came back, he had already learned the news of the Qin family's rebellion. He said, "Such a scoundrel should be hanged at the gate of the city as an example, and the Qin family should all be executed to avoid future troubles." Pang Yukan did not object. The murder of King Qi was a crime of great treason, and according to the law, the 9 clans should be punished. Now all the Wei family who conspired with the Qin family have been thrown into prison and executed in the autumn, while the rest of the Qin family have been beheaded in Dongxi. The 4 aristocratic families who were once all-powerful have completely disappeared in Kingzhou. A few days ago, Xiao Ming still had fantasies about the wealthy family, and he was soft-hearted, but after the Qin family assassination incident, he will no longer have any sympathy for these wealthy families, because he knows that the conflicts between himself and the wealthy family cannot be reconciled. "Either you die or I die," he said. Qin Chuanian and other participants in the burning of Guanzhong and all the merchants who acted as meticulous craftsmen will be escorted to Kangzhou. In order to set an example, this king will hang them on the city wall of Kangzhou to let those rebels understand what will happen to them. "Yes, Your Highness, I'll do it now." Pang Yukan smiled. The Qin family and the Wei family were imprisoned, and there were no noble families in Kangzhou. From then on, this was the world of King Qi. The news brought by Wang Zhuan meant that the cloud of war was finally coming to Kangzhou, which was a fateful battle for Xiao Ming. The barbarian can lose, but he cannot lose, because if he loses, he will lose everything. If he wins, he will not only be able to change his status among the vassal kings of the Great Yu Kingdom, but his fiefs will also gain a stable development period from now on, and this is what he needs. After all, he has a technology spar. As a civilization maker, his task is to promote the explosion of civilization in modern times. It is precisely because of the bug-like technological explosion in Europe after the 15th century that Western civilization defeated Eastern civilization for the first time here. In this time and space, he will never allow his country to be opened up by Western cannons again. His Royal Highness, when you go to Kangzhou, you must take good care of your health and don't be stubborn. Now, the safety of Your Highness is related to the millions of people on the fief. After the tentative attack of the Huanchuo tribe, an army of barbarians will inevitably usher in the matter in Kangzhou was very important, and Xiao Ming had to go to Kangzhou to take command in person. This was also to be safe. Xiao Ming held Aster's little hand that was arranging the cape for himself. Aster just blushed slightly and did not refuse. He said, "This king hasn't watched the amazing dance choreographed by you and Luluo? How can you be willing to die?" Luluo smiled and said, "Yes, elder sister, you can stay at the palace with peace of mind. With me taking care of you, there will be no mistakes in Your Highness's daily life." Aster nodded and sighed. This time, when Xiao Ming went to Kangzhou, he only brought Luluo with him, while Ziwen stayed in the palace. After all, he needed a confidant to stay in Kangzhou. Rubbing it again on Aster's little hand, Xiao Ming said to Luluo at this time, "Let's go. Time is running out." Luluo nodded and followed Xiao Ming obediently to the palace. Outside the door, the 500 cavalry escorting Xiao Ming to Kangzhou City had been waiting for a long time. Xiao Ming glanced at Ziwen, who was a little worried, and smiled knowingly. The two were originally slaves given to him by concubine Zhen, and they could be said to be their own personal belongings. In this era, the two of them couldn't resist what they did to them. The only question was whether they were happy or not. Although he has transformed into a prince now, Xiao Ming still resists using force in his heart, and slaves need to be cultivated. Obviously, the two have become much closer to themselves during this time, and some small actions are natural. Set off. With an order, the cavalry slowly advanced towards Kangzhou City. 3 days later, The group arrived at Kangzhou City at this time. Niu Ben, Lu Fei and Lu Ozin had been stationed in Kangzhou City for more than a month, and Zan Xingcheng's repairs to the city wall had also been completed. Riding a horse into Kangzhou City, a sense of sudden desolation hits my face. Unlike Kangzhou City is only 10 miles long and wide, and there are few people nearby. These commoners have yellow muscles, ragged clothes, and fear of a possible war in their eyes. In the past month, a large number of troops have entered Kangzhou City, enough to make them guess what. As for the Minfang in the city, Xiao Ming can still see the ruins left by the war 3 years ago. Because of the war, most of the people of Kangzhou were either killed or taken away in the later period. Very few people came back. There were many houses in the city and few people. Naturally, no one repaired these burned houses in Kangzhou City. Xiao Ming Xingyun was ready. After entering the city, he went directly to the station where Xingyun was located. Your Highness, as soon as he settled down in Xingyun, Niu Ben rushed over in a hurry. Xiao Ming said, "The old general is exempted from the ceremony." "Thank you, old general. I also found such an exquisite yard for this king." Xingyun is located in a courtyard, but there are many rockeries, flowers, plants and gardens in it. Although it is not as good as the palace, it has its own beauty as long as your highness likes it. Niu Ben said with a smile, "There are still a few good yards in the city, but your highness said that it is closer to the city gate, so the last general chose this one." Xiao Ming nodded. "Talking about business, is there any change in the barbarians these few days?" Niu Ben's expression also became solemn. "The last commander will come to the next business to talk about this. The Huanshuo tribe is less than 100 miles away from Kangzhou City, and it is estimated that they will be able to reach Kangzhou City tomorrow." "How are the defense preparations on the city?" "According to the plan, the artillery didn't go up this time. The old logs, hot oil, stones, and catapults went up, but the guns were also used, and the powder cans were not ready to be used." Niu Ben said, "Well, in this way, some gunpowder cans are also shipped. Don't use it unless it is absolutely necessary." Xiao Ming said, "In the case of Qin Shuanayan, the prairie merchants clearly stated that the formula of this gunpowder came from the barbarians. So the barbarians understood gunpowder. This is not surprising. After all, gunpowder has been around for hundreds of years, and the Dayu Kingdom is also using gunpowder weapons such as torches against the barbarians. It is impossible for the barbarians not to know what it is." In this way, he was even more worried, because the method he used to deal with the barbarians was likely to be learned by the barbarians as well. Because of this, he attaches great importance to artillery. Powder cans are easy to learn, but artillery cannot be built without technology. When he arrived in Kangzhou, it was not for enjoyment. He got up and said, "It's still early. Let's go to the city wall to see." Zan Xingcheng doesn't know how the city wall has been repaired. Chapter 171. Brutal soldiers arrive. The fragrant smell of green grass mixed with the earth blows from the land north of Kangzhou City. Outside the city of Kangzhou, the golden sun shines on the endless grassland. A path leads to the distance, and occasionally a collapsed thatched cottage on the side of the road tells of the past. Here, after the barbarians captured Yaozhou, they burned the houses and forests, and arrested the people. A prosperous land was overgrown with weeds for 10 years, and it became a grazing land for Huintuo Buluo. On the city wall, Niu Ben looked at the endless grassland, and his words were full of desolation. 10 years ago, he stood on this city wall and witnessed a barbarian cavalry galloping here and there. Zan Xingcheng was also on the city wall. After working hard for more than 2 months, everyone else lost a lot of weight. However, with tens of thousands of slaves working day and night, a majestic city wall appeared. Unfortunately, King Yuan guarded Yaozhou. He used to be the most powerful vassal king, but he couldn't resist the barbarians. Zan Xingcheng said. Xiao Ming looked at the fertile soil outside the city, starting from Kangzhou City to Yaozhou, a total of more than 400 miles, and this Yaozhou is the location of the modern Ming Dynasty Forbidden City. The Ming Dynasty, known as the emperor who guarded the country's gate and the king's death, disappeared from history like dust after the loss of Shanhaiguan, and after the destruction of Shanhaiguan, the entire fiefdom was trampled by barbarians. If it wasn't for Niu Ben's strong defense of Kangzhou City at that time, and the fact that the western regions encountered the Ottoman Empire, the barbarians would definitely not have given up their plan to continue their journey south in this way. The Ottoman Empire inadvertently delayed the destruction of the Great Yu Kingdom. Don't raise other people's ambition and destroy your own prestige, Xiao Ming said lightly. The Yu country has changed quite a bit, and what is most needed at this time is morale. Now Xiao Ming has nowhere to go. If he doesn't defend Kangzhou, He is not far from death. Zan Xingcheng woke up, and he fell into the same sympathy and compassion as many scholars in the great Yu kingdom. Niu Ben nodded. The barbarians are nothing to be afraid of. They are also flesh and blood, and there is nothing to be afraid of. The only thing to worry about is that the soldiers are afraid before they fight. Zan Xingcheng looked embarrassed and said, "Let your highness," and the general laughed. Xiaoming patted him on the shoulder and said, "But what you said is not entirely wrong. Tactically, you must pay attention to the enemy, and strategically, you must despise the enemy." Ha ha ha. Your highness's words are classic, but they can be written into the art of war. Niu Ben was startled, and suddenly said when Zan Xingcheng heard the words, he fell into thinking. Xiaoming said with a smile, "I didn't say these words, but a great man. But these words are in response to the current situation with the barbarians," the three of them said while patrolling the city wall, which was 500 meters away from the city wall on the side of the grassland. Now Xiaoming has transferred most of the fief's troops to Kangzhou City. The number is as expected, a total of 50,000 people except for the Kingzhou army, which was equipped with new plate armor and weapons. The other new armies were poorly equipped and could only be used as a backup. After inspecting the city wall of Kangzhou, Zan Xingcheng basically realized the original idea. Now there is a gun tower every 10 meters on the city tower, and a prominent battlement every 50 meters. These battlements were perpendicular to the walls, so that soldiers could have more defensive positions at this time. Crossbows and catapults have been arranged in the battlements, and the archers are already in place, ready to fight at any time. On the city wall outside the battlements, there are still logs, stones, caltrops, long forks and other defensive tools stacked on the city walls. The long forks are used to push the ladder away, and everything else is for throwing away. Along the inner side of the city wall are hanging baskets leading to the city, and under the hanging baskets are more materials for the defense of the city. At the same time, there is a large iron pot every 20 meters under the city wall. These iron pots are filled with oil, which is also used to deal with the climbing barbarian soldiers. Outside the city walls is another scene. A trench 3 meters deep and 3 meters wide was dug along the city wall, and in the trench were buried bamboo pieces that were raised and sharpened. Barbarian soldiers in this era wore nothing but leather boots, and the soft bottom could not resist such sharp bamboo chips. On the outside of the trench are densely packed half-person-high pillars. These pillars are buried under the foundation to prevent the barbarians from charging on a large scale, so that the barbarian soldiers are piled up and become the targets of artillery. As Royal Highness, there are many traps on the outside. These traps are covered with turf and are not easy to detect. This time, the defense strategy of the city wall was formulated by Zan Xingcheng, such as trenches, stone pillars and so on. Niu Ben said to Xiaoming, "This young man is not bad, he is insidious enough. Now the barbarians are here, but they will suffer." Zan Xingcheng said depressedly, "Captain, are you praising me or hurting me?" "Of course I'm complimenting you." Niu Ben laughed loudly. Like Peng Yukin, he was also a lover of talent. In his opinion, this Zan Xingcheng is much stronger than many powerful children. Xiaoming was also satisfied with Zan Xingcheng's arrangement, because between the stone pillars, Zan Xingcheng also used hemp rope to trap the rattans soaked in tune oil on the stone pillar. These rattans are very strong after being soaked in tune oil, and it takes a while to chop with a sword. During this time, the crossbowmen on the city wall were able to shoot with all their strength. "Good job," Xiaoming said with satisfaction. Generally speaking, the siege of the city is relatively difficult, and it is difficult to win a siege with 5 times the force. The more obstacles are set up in the siege process, the greater the loss of the siege party. Walking around the city wall, Xiaoming remembered that he had not seen Lu Fei and Luo Xin, and he asked, "Old General, what about Lu Fei and Luo Xin?" "Mention this." Niu Ben with a wry smile he said, "Since receiving His Highness's telescope, these two have not been idle, but went out with soldiers to inquire every day. With this telescope, they can discover barbarian scouts in advance every time, which makes them one by one." Unreceivable. Xiaoming shook his head helplessly. Going out with the binoculars was the same as bullying the nearsighted. No wonder the two couldn't stop. The two were talking about Xiao Xiao. When Xiao Xiao arrived, they saw a pair of cavalry figures appear in the distance, and the two in front were Lu Fei and Luo Xin. When they got close, the two also saw Xiaoming entering the city. The two immediately climbed to the city wall, and Lu Fei was out of breath. "His Royal Highness, the Huanchuo department has accelerated the marching speed, and it is estimated that they will reach the city at noon tomorrow." This time, the entire tribe of Huanchuo migrated to Kangzhou City. "It is very important to be stationed here. It seems that the barbarian army is behind. They are providing cattle and sheep for the follow-up army." Niu Ben asked, "What about the number of troops?" Only Huangchuo has 20,000 cavalrymen and countless slaves. Luo Xin looked solemn. Chapter 172 Blood-Stained Battlefield. In the early morning, wisps of cooking smoke floated in the city of Kangzhou. If it weren't for the soldiers running back and forth in the city, Xiao Ming even suspected that he had returned to the mountain village he used to be in his childhood. However, after living here for a while, for him, everywhere is just like the countryside in the past. He always thought that the ancient royal family lived like it was on TV, but when he came here, he found out that the royal family's food was similar to that of modern ordinary people. This is not a problem of shortage of materials, but the level of technology is here. Xiao Ming didn't fall asleep last night, facing a large-scale cold weapon war. He was not strong enough to look like a normal person. After hurriedly eating a bowl of rice porridge and meat patties brought by Luo, he put on tailor-made armor and climbed the city wall. At this time, all the soldiers were already on guard on the city wall, and many people in the city also gathered under the city wall, ready to help at any time. The news brought by Luo Xin and Lu Fei last night meant that the first wave of attacks on Kangzhou City was imminent. Your Highness, here we come. Before noon, the sky was like a dark cloud floating over, and it was dark. At this time, Niu Ben pointed to the north and said to Xiao Ming, picking up the binoculars. Xiao Ming looked over. Through the enlarged image, he saw a large area of barbarian cavalry. Lu Fei and Luo Xin immediately went to their place. Because the area of the city wall is very long, there is a commander in charge of each distance, and Niu Ben is responsible for the scheduling of the entire battle. Our trap is probably useless. Putting down the telescope, Xiao Ming sighed. Standing beside him is Zan Xingcheng, who is also using a telescope to observe. The barbarians have driven so many slaves ahead, and our trap is over. Before the barbarian cavalry, they were slaves tied up with ropes. These slaves had the same appearance as the people of the Dao country, and they were once clearly the people of the Dao country. Niu Ben said, "There is no way out. The barbarians will definitely use slaves to attack before attacking. Your Highness, don't be soft-hearted at this time. They are indeed the people of the Great Yu Kingdom, but behind you are also the people of the Great Yu country." In those days, Shanhaiguang was just because King Yang was soft-hearted, and let these expelled people enter the city before the battle. As a result, I never thought that some of these slaves were willing to become barbarian eagle dogs, which led to the capture of the city gate, and the barbarian cavalry took advantage of the situation. Niu Ben continued. Xiao Ming nodded lightly. In the wars of the past and present, there are countless such cases. The figure of the barbarian cavalry is getting closer and closer. 1,000 meters, 800 meters, 500 meters. Finally, at a distance of 500 meters, the barbarian cavalry stopped, and the battlefield was silent. The barbarian cavalry also stared at the soldiers in silver armor on the city. The two sides faced each other for a while, and suddenly a loud horn came from the barbarian formation. At this time, the barbarian cavalry suddenly dismounted, and the slaves who were driven were skilled in taking down various things from their horses. They are camping on the spot. Niu Ben said, at this time the Huangchuo tribe is a pure nomadic tribe. Wherever the cattle and sheep go, they are stationed there. This time, the Huangchuo tribe brought slaves and drove the cattle and sheep here. It seems that the barbarians are preparing to besiege Kangzhou City. Xiao Ming glanced at the artillery that was wrapped in black cloth on the city wall. The range of the artillery he produced this time was between 3 and 4 miles. At this time, the barbarians were stationed within the range. One shot can definitely hit them all, but they have to hold back no matter how ticklish they are, because the real important characters have not yet appeared. If the great Khan of the barbarians does appear, then it will be the time when the artillery fires. The barbarians camped leisurely, and the soldiers in the city could only watch. No way. These barbarian soldiers are cavalry when mounted, and infantry when dismounted. If cavalry was sent to harass him at this time, they would face 20,000 cavalry and shooters, and there would be no return. A slave is coming. Niu Ben suddenly sighed. Xiao Ming saw that in the Huangchuo tribe who were camping at this time, some slaves suddenly came to Kangzhou City. These slaves lined up and walked towards Kangzhou City step by step. Zan Xingcheng gritted his teeth. These barbarians are simply utterly devastated, and they don't take the people of our Great Yu Kingdom as human beings at all. It's more than just being a human being. Don't you know another name for the people of the Great Yu Kingdom by the barbarians? What? Zan Xingcheng asked. Niu Ben looked at the slaves who were constantly marching towards death and said, "Two-footed sheep, double-footed sheep." Xiao Ming frowned slightly. This term has appeared in modern history. As the name suggests, this double-footed sheep is a sheep with only 2 legs. At that time, China was in the era of Wuhu, chaotic China. The Han people called the two-legged sheep were not only the slaves of the barbarians, but also the food of the barbarians. This is where the two-legged sheep came from. Niu Ben continued, when the barbarians invaded Yaozhou, there was a shortage of food. At that time, the barbarians fed on the Han people. This is the origin of the two-legged sheep. These words made Zhang Xingcheng clench his fists. He never thought that the barbarians would be so vicious. What? A scream came, and the slave who was walking on the grass suddenly fell into the trap, and bursts of screams came from the pit. At this moment, a burst of laughter came from the mouth of the barbarian cavalry who followed behind the slave on the city wall. The soldiers watched everything, and those who held their weapons turned white from too much force. They know what the barbarians are laughing at. They are laughing at the traps they have worked so hard to dig that can only kill their own people. Xiaoming watched everything in silence. This is war, a battlefield where everything is possible. There is no mercy or sympathy in this battlefield. The only purpose of both sides is to kill each other. The expelled slaves panicked. They hesitated and did not dare to advance, which angered the barbarian cavalry, who waved their machetes and slashed at the slaves who refused to advance. A shrill cry rang out on the empty battlefield, and the slaves shivered and moved forward again. The traps were destroyed one by one, and the barbarian cavalry finally stopped at a distance of 200 meters. At this time, there were only 100 slaves of the 500 people in front of them. At this time, the barbarian cavalry took out bows and arrows and continued to yell at the slaves to advance. Your Highness, you can't let these slaves advance anymore, otherwise all the traps will be over. Zhang Xingcheng almost gritted his teeth and said, this is the hatred of the barbarians. Looking at the barbarian cavalry standing 200 meters away, Niu Ben took a soldier and handed over a bow and arrow. He said, Your Highness, there must be no woman's kindness at this time. A war may only be caused by a few traps. Will change. Old general, handle it yourself. Xiaoming looked solemn. It turned out that this was the battle of defending the city. Whoosh! The sound of a sharp arrow, followed by a scream. Xiaoming clearly saw a massive blood burst from the chest of the slave walking in the front. Chapter 173 Bloody Battle. Screams resounded on the battlefield. Niu Ben's lips were trembling, but the bow and arrow in his hand were as ruthless as the scythe of the god of death. Every time he killed a person, he felt a little more guilt, but he knew that behind him were tens of millions of the people of the Great Yu Kingdom, and he couldn't be soft. The conflicting emotions stirred his heart like thorns. Xiaoming's heart is also uncomfortable. Killing one person and saving 10,000 people is right, but now that he does it himself, a strong sense of guilt keeps coming. These were all unarmed and ravaged by the barbarians, and the one who shot and killed them was Tongs, whom they missed day and night. It's just that Xiaoming understands that they must bear it. Even if they are reviled by thousands of people in the history books in the future, they must bear it. The slaves fell one by one, and the barbarian cavalry laughed even louder. They seemed to be laughing at Niu Ben's futile efforts, because soon another batch of slaves was driven over. General, let me go out. What is this? Lu Fei suddenly ran over from the area he was defending, his face flushed with anger. General, let's go out of the city, otherwise what's the use of us? Cavalry, shouted the soldiers behind Lu Fei. Shut up! Niu Ben said angrily, his voice like a hongjong. Don't say that you only have 1,000 people. Each of you is as skilled in bowing horses as barbarian cavalry. Go out and die. Don't you just watch the people come to die like this. They are also the people of the Great Yu Kingdom. Lu Fei's eyes were splitting. Luo Xin also came over at this time. He pulled Lu Fei and said, Xia Aoilu, don't make a fool of yourself. Isn't the life of the soldiers not life? Isn't the life of the common people just life? For you, the chief officials in Chang'an, are the common people all untouchables? Lu Fei shook off Luo Xin's hand. Niu Ben angrily glared at Lu Fei. If you continue to make a fool of yourself, you will be ruthless, and you will be punished by military law. I'm not afraid. As long as I go out of the city to kill the enemy, you can look at my HUD when you come back. Lu Fei shouted. Lu Fei, this king knew that you would make trouble, and you know why. You have made great contributions, but this king refused to let you be the governor of Kingzhou. If this king asked you to command the defense of the city, I am afraid that 20,000 Kingzhou soldiers are now. You have already fallen under the bows and arrows of the barbarians. You seem to be brave in doing so, but in fact it is nothing more than a foolhardy act. You will not only bury the 1,000 cavalrymen who followed you out of the city, but also tens of millions of people. Can you? Keep your head up. Xiaoming scolded. Lu Fei was also in a hurry, but only when he came back to his senses did he gradually understand the barbarians will beat me hard later. Lu Fei stomped his feet and smashed the city wall before turning around Niu Ben's side. This is a stunner. Don't suffer any losses. This temper will never change. At this time a new batch of slaves had arrived, and they were walking towards the trenches again. Fire arrows. Xiao Ming gritted his teeth and gave the order. These traps are used to kill the barbarians, not the people. His heart was bleeding. People, for the sake of Kangzhou City, I'm sorry. Until next year's Qingming festival. This king will pour a bowl of rice wine on your graves in person. Whizzing, arrows poured down from the top of the city, and the people driven by the barbarians kept falling in a pool of blood. But the barbarians kept driving away waves of slaves, not only to destroy the traps, but also to destroy the stone pillars. From noon to evening, the guards at the head of the city were tense, and it was not until the sun went down that the barbarians stopped driving the people to destroy the defenses in front of the city. There is no moon tonight, and it is pitch black. A bonfire gradually rose in the barbarian camp, and the smell of roasted sheep continued to float from there. After tonight, tomorrow will be a bloody battle. After returning to Xingying to rest for the night, Xiao Ming was woken up by the deafening screams of killing. The next day he climbed up the city wall and saw thousands of slaves carrying ladders and rushing towards the city wall with knives, guns and clubs. The barbarian cavalry stood far away, staring at the slaves attacking the city like a supervisor. The 500-meter city wall. The barbarians attacked this time around the city gate, and Xiao Ming was standing there. Yesterday, the barbarians found almost all the traps set on the outside. Today, they repeated their old tricks and drove the slave soldiers to attack the city. These slave soldiers were also the people of the Great Yu Kingdom, but at this time they became slave soldiers of the barbarians. Release the arrow. Niu Ben roared. The archers on the city wall immediately poured their arrows down, and the slave soldiers who rushed in front of them carrying the cloud ladder fell to the ground one after another, while the slave soldiers in the back carried the ladder and continued to charge forward. The first batch of charged slave soldiers numbered 3,000, and they were densely distributed on the battlefield, with great momentum. In Xiao Ming's eyes, this is more shocking than the whole school doing exercises on the playground. The head of the city is still dominated by crossbowmen. Since he can only defend passively in the next few years, Xiao Ming has increased the number of crossbowmen in the Kingzhou army. 5,000 of the 20,000 Kingzhou army are crossbowmen at this time. These crossbowmen exerted their terrifying long-range killing ability, and the power of the crossbow arrows within 100 meters was great. However, these slave soldiers also seemed to have been trained, and soon a row of slave soldiers with shields appeared in front of them, and their speed slowed down. But this formation allowed them to reduce casualties. Zan Xingcheng frowned. His mood was complicated at this time, and his sympathy for these slaves suddenly disappeared, because at this time they became fierce enemies again. 60 meters. Zan Xingcheng suddenly shouted. As soon as the voice fell, the slave soldiers rushing in front suddenly disappeared, and a large number of slave soldiers rolled into the trap one by one. The traps at 60 meters were all triggered by the slave soldiers. This time, all the traps that Zan Xingcheng dug were gone. The other slaves did not stop. For him, they could only survive by capturing Kangzhou City. In this choice, they can only choose to live on their own. Liu Zhuan, are you really sure that this King Qi has a very powerful weapon? In the barbarian camp, a bare-armed barbarian in a white cape asked. And beside him was a smuggler from the Dao Kingdom in a blue round-neck shirt. There's nothing wrong, although I didn't see it, but when King Qi attacked Liu Jiao Wubao, many people heard a loud noise. When I came to Wubao, I saw a big hole in the wall. Liu Zhuan said, well, Khan will come with a large army soon. Before that, we must test the true face of this weapon. If it really exists, I will give you a few good words in front of Khan. Liu Zhuan looked flattering. Thank you for the head of the Gulte flag. If the Khan captures Kangzhou City and kills King Qi, it will also be for my Liu family's revenge. Chapter 174 Barbarian Archers. P.S. I will add more updates today, and there will be 4 more tonight. Please recommend, please ask for monthly tickets, and ask for rewards. The sound of fighting and roars were intertwined on the battlefield, and blood stained the grass on the ground on the land. The corpses of the slave soldiers gradually piled up, and the follow-up slave soldiers still rushed forward without fear of death. The bows and arrows of the barbarians are behind them, and the arrows of the soldiers of Kangzhou City are in front of them. There is still a glimmer of hope of survival if they capture Kangzhou City. If they fail to capture the city, they will all be killed by barbarians. This was the order of Gulte, the head of the Huanshuo banner. Before the siege, in order to survive, they can no longer care that the opposite city wall is their comrade, and behind the city wall is the land of the Great Yu Kingdom, and the people of the Great Yu Kingdom know, they are not only trying to survive, they actually have hatred in their hearts. They hate the Great Yu Kingdom, they hate their wives, children, young and old being raped by the barbarians. Why did the Great Yu Kingdom not send troops? When they hated that their homeland was burned to the ground by the barbarians, why did the Great Yu Kingdom not send troops? They hated why the Great Yu Kingdom did not send troops when King Yong killed himself. This kind of hatred is brewing in their hearts day and night. The country behind the city wall is gradually unfamiliar to them, and a desire for destruction grows in their hearts. Die. Let's die together. Gulte smiled knowingly at the slave soldiers who were constantly pounding the city walls of Kangzhou City. The strategy of using slave soldiers as the vanguard was very popular among the barbarians, and the victories of the wars pushed this strategy to a lofty position in their eyes. Other peoples are cowardly, and the threat of death and thirst for life will make these slave soldiers willing to be driven by the barbarians, and most importantly, these slaves saw no hope of returning to their homeland. No one or any army can fight barbarian cavalry on the steppe, and from time to time, they would instill in these slaves the idea that their monarch had abandoned them, which made these slaves gradually lose the hope of the Great Yu Kingdom. Liu Zhuan was also watching these slave soldiers who were fighting desperately. His expression was complicated, and he couldn't tell whether it was sympathy or sorrow in his eyes. It's just that this emotion was quickly replaced by hatred. In the Golden Horde, there were many people from Dai who advised the barbarians. They included unhappy scholars and businessmen who traveled between the two countries. Most of them are the descendants of slaves. They have now fully integrated into the life of the barbarians, and the Great Yu Kingdom is just a distant country for them. Like many businessmen who traveled to and from the grasslands, he believed that it was only a matter of time before the barbarians would conquer the Great Yu Kingdom. For the barbarians, the word barbarian is nothing but a prejudice against the barbarians of the Great Yu Kingdom. This is a country that has a complete bureaucratic and military system regardless of government affairs, people's livelihood, business, and skills, and because they controlled the Hexi Corridor and the Silk Road in the Han period. The barbarians made a lot of money by taxing the traders along the road. The dignitaries of the Great Yu Kingdom believed that the war between the barbarians and the Ottoman Empire was only because the barbarians were bloodthirsty and warlike, but they did not know that the barbarians and the Ottoman Empire were actually fighting for this trade route that runs through the east and west. After all, the strength of the Ottoman Empire also benefited from this trade route. They levied heavy taxes on merchants from the west to the east, which led to high trade costs. Therefore, in recent years, Western merchants gradually gave up this trade route, and it is said that the sea opened up a route to the east. This incident, to the chagrin of the barbarians, led to a war between the barbarians and the Ottoman Empire, but the Ottoman Empire was equally powerful, and the barbarians killed 1,000 and wounded 800. Liu Zhuan came back to his senses and looked at the battlefield again. At this time, the slave soldiers rushed over the stone pillars in front of the city wall and began to build the ladder. At this moment, the soldiers of the city wall caught his attention, all of them wearing silver armor that covered their bodies. He looked at Gulte, and at this time Gulte showed a playful look, and he said, "You also notice that I have seen several similar armors in the Khan's palace. It is said that this armor is from the west past. It's the first time I've seen this kind of armor, and I haven't gone back for a long time," said Liu Zhuan. Gulte frowned and said, "This kind of armor is not easy to deal with. Ordinary swords are not very useful to them, and it takes a lot of money to forge a pair of this kind of armor. When will you not only master this kind of armor? Forging so much armor. According to the information I got, King Qi seems to have mastered the forging technology of this kind of armor, so this King Qi is not simple." Liu Zhuan reminded Gulte, for barbarian nomadic tribes, a tribe is a flag, a small tribe is a small flag, a middle tribe is a middle flag, and a big tribe is a big flag, and the leader is called the head of the flag. The Huanshuo tribe was just the middle flag in the Golden Horde in the fall of Shanhaiguan. Because of his outstanding contribution, Tian Khan gave him all the land in Shanhaiguan, so for him, this war is especially important to him, because it will mean whether he can continue to expand his tribe's territory. Over the years, the population of the Huanshuo tribe has grown a lot. If he gets the land in Fengguan, he believes that it is only a matter of time before he becomes the leader of the banner. There are few princes in the Great Yu Kingdom who are useful, so what if they wear these armors? Can they still withstand our bows and arrows? Change the armor-piercing arrows. Gulte curled his lips seeing the slave soldiers rushing to the city. He waved to the cavalry beside him. 2,000 barbarian archers immediately formed a phalanx and moved towards the city wall at the top of the city. At this time, the soldiers of the Kingzhou army kept throwing stones and logs at the slave soldiers who were climbing the ladder. The slave soldiers on the ladder were constantly being crushed to death by stones and logs, but one slave soldier after another continued to climb up hot oil. Niu Ben looked at the battlefield situation and gave an order. The slave soldiers went one after another, and the arrows under the city were dense like hedgehogs. The injured slave soldiers cried out in pain under the city, and soon died at the feet of the follow-up slave soldiers on the inner side of the city wall. The hot kerosene had already been boiled, and at Neuben's order, the auxiliary soldiers immediately lifted the scalding kerosene onto the city wall. These kerosene are to deal with the ladder. As long as the ladder is not broken, these slave soldiers will keep climbing. Xiao Ming had been observing the situation on the battlefield. When he noticed that the barbarian archers began to move forward, it's just that this is not what he cares about most, because he also found that the slave soldiers under the city were digging the roots of the city wall. You guys, kill those slave soldiers. Xiao Ming commanded a pair of crossbow fingers to point at the slave soldiers who were digging holes under the wall. These slave soldiers had only one purpose for digging holes, and that was to blow up the city wall with gunpowder. When the crossbowmen got the order, they immediately shot at the slave soldiers, and the slave soldiers immediately fell in a pool of blood amid the screams of the winning streak. At this time, the archers of the barbarians were getting closer and closer, and they were covering the siege of the slave soldiers. At this time, Xiao Ming shouted, "The catapult, put on the powder can." Chapter 175. The power of the powder can. Blood splashed, and Lu Fei drew his long sword from the slave soldier's chest. At this time, his body was dyed red with blood, and even though the stones and logs fell again and again, slave soldiers climbed up in the chaos from the 500-meter city wall. Pushed down the ladder. Lu Fei gave an order, and the two soldiers picked up the fork and pushed the ladder to the outside. The slave soldier who was climbing on the cloud screamed and fell from the ladder, knife and shield hand. Looking up at the front, Lu Fei only saw the moment when the barbarian archer bent a bow and shot an arrow, and he hurriedly shouted. The shield hand who was guarding the city wall immediately tilted and raised the shield, and then a sound like raindrops sounded on the shield. Da da da. At the end of the sound, a soldier's shield was shot into a hedgehog, and the iron sheet attached to the outer layer of the wooden shield was shot through. Lu Fei looked at the arrow and scolded, "Armor-piercing arrow, brothers, be careful." Then he asked a captain to take his place, and he walked towards Xiao Ming. "Your Highness, use the catapult." Lu Fei was a little embarrassed. So far, only slave soldiers have died, and the barbarian archers have only shot from a distance of more than 100 meters, so they are very safe. Several soldiers held their shields in front of Xiao Ming. He said, "I'm about to inform you to let the soldiers throw powder cans. Remember, the three leads must be lit at the same time, okay?" Lu Fei responded, turned and ran back, shouting all the way, "Blow up these bastards for me this time." Xiao Ming specially ordered 3 leads to be installed in the powder can. After all, this kind of thrown powder can easily go out, and the 3 leads can ensure the success rate of the explosion of the powder can. The soldiers in charge of the catapult immediately put the gunpowder canister into the groove of the catapult and aimed at the barbarian archers one after another. These barbarian archers stood close to 200 meters away, using their bows and arrows to continuously shoot at the King Xiao army soldiers at the head of the city. Many soldiers fell to the ground injured by bows and arrows. Let it go, and order 50 catapults simultaneously threw out the powder cans that had ignited the fuse. The barbarian archers who were shooting saw many black dots in the sky, realized that it was a stone thrown by the catapult, and immediately avoided it. Boom, boom, a series of sounds. The gunpowder pot wrapped in thick straw smashed to the ground and made a dull sound. There were also some archers who could not dodge in time, and were directly smashed by the brains of the gunpowder cans. Those barbarian soldiers who easily avoided the powder pot looked at the round things on the ground and began to laugh, as if they were proud of their success in avoiding these things. Only their laughter ended with a loud boom. The powerful impact and thick smoke instantly enveloped the nearby barbarian soldiers, and many barbarians within a radius of 10 meters fell one after another. The shards of the pottery pot flew out from the explosion of the gunpowder pot, and the stench of iron nails mixed with the steel quickly spread out. The barbarian soldiers at the center of the explosion were blown to pieces, and the soldiers on the outside were basically injured and fell to the ground crying. The barbarian soldiers were heartbroken, and they retreated in fright. At this time, the second wave of powder cans was thrown over by the catapult again, and the wounded soldiers who had no time to escape were torn apart in another explosion. Good fight. Ha ha ha. Lu Fei laughed loudly from the city wall. The unexpected attack of the powder pot caused the barbarian soldiers to retreat, and the slave soldiers who lost their cover were once again covered by a dense rain of arrows on the city wall. Gulte held the reins tightly to prevent the horse that was seated from running away in panic. The continuous huge explosions panicked the barbarian horses, and the barbarian soldiers took hold of their reins to prevent the horses from escaping. Is this King Qi's secret weapon? Gute's face turned pale. Despite being 300 meters apart, he still felt the slight vibration of the ground caused by the explosion. It should be. Liu Zhuan said, I didn't expect that after the torch, the Great Yu Kingdom was using this gunpowder weapon again. Galte said, well, soon they will understand that our barbarians also use gunpowder, and then I will blow their walls and soldiers into the sky. Liu Zhuan nodded. He knew that there were a lot of gunpowder kegs hidden in the camp. These gunpowder kegs were specially used to blow up the city wall. This trick was learned by the barbarians during the war with the Ottoman Empire. One of the purposes of this siege was to test the defensive capabilities of the King's Zhao army. The second is to keep digging holes into the city wall, and when the army arrives, you can blow up the city wall with gunpowder, thereby annihilating the defenders in one fell swoop. Thinking of this, Liu Zhuan already saw hope of victory. He said, but it is said that Bishan Khan can throw stones at a distance of 500 meters with a back-and-forth artillery this time. At that time, these Kangzhou city defenders were not beaten. Cher Guorte smiled and said, yes, let these southerners live for a few more days. After he finished speaking, he asked the archers to withdraw one after another, not caring about the life and death of the slave soldiers. The war lasted from morning to night, and the barbarians drove off the slave soldiers one after another. At this time, the corpses of the slave soldiers were lying under the city, and the setting sun was like blood, which made the scene even more desolate. The ditch under the city was now filled with corpses. Xiao Ming watched the retreating slave soldiers and smashed the city wall. Up until now, even the barbarian's fur has not been injured. Damn it, Niu Ben comforted, Your Highness, this is the way the barbarians have always used warfare. Only when the opponent is exhausted and suffers heavy losses will they attack. Looking at the artillery hidden in the black cloth, Xiao Ming nodded and said, forget it, when the main force of the barbarians arrives, this king will definitely make them pay the price at the end of the day's war. Niu Ben immediately asked the soldiers to prepare stones, logs and other supplies. This time it was just a tentative attack by the barbarians, and the real bloody battle was still to come. He knew this well. However, judging from today's battle, his confidence in this defensive battle has greatly increased. The full body armor of the King's Zhao army played a great role in this battle, and few soldiers were injured or killed. The only time the injury was serious was the bow and arrow thrown by the barbarian archer, and many people were injured at that time back in Zhangjian. Luluo thoughtfully removed Xiao Ming's armor. Seeing the blood on the armor, Luluo worried, Your Highness, where are you injured? I'm not hurt. Xiao Ming was a little tired. His nerves had been tense all day, but he finally relaxed. Luluo breathed a sigh of relief, her heart skipping a beat just now, when he said, by the way, Your Highness, Pang Changshi brought a message and said that the equipment department has 4 more artillery pieces to be transported to Kangzhou City. Really? At this time, this king heard the best news today. Xiao Ming said, with these 4, there are 30 artillery pieces in Kangzhou City, and the main force of the barbarians will probably arrive soon. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.